I did.
It's fantastic.
If it's necessary.
You can whistle it up now that we're live. Whistle. See, let's check it and see if the volume actually works. And let's see if Glenn can tell us where the volume works.
Hey, I brought my boat air horn one night for Yvonne when we were having a meeting. She didn't choose to use it, but
Bring it back.
she was having so much trouble getting attention.
Ladies, can y'all keep it down in that other room? Just because you're in the other room doesn't mean you're not on the camera. I'm going to get a camera put in there just for you guys. Everybody's like, I don't want to be on camera. Like, how do I hide from these people? I don't want to be known as the crazy. All right, so we're live. It is June 20th, the year of our Lord 2025, as Steve Bannon would say. Is it the first day of summer? Oh, wow.
Indeed.
It is. Yesterday was Juneteenth.
And all the Republicans freed all the slaves from the
When the
Democrats.
Republicans actually freed the slaves from the Democrats. And Joe Farmer put out a message about that, a Facebook post about it. And I saw it yet this morning. And I actually made a comment back to a girl that had made the thing. Oh, well, there was a switch, a title switch, a switch in the parties. I'm like, I don't think there was a switch. Yes, the Republicans predominantly lived in the North back then, but they freed the slaves. Now the switch has been those people have gone to the Democratic Party, which actually enslaves people through modern day slavery,
Right. Well,
being addicted to the coin and all that kind of stuff, government slavery.
You did see the comment from the mayor of Los Angeles this week.
Which is?
She said, we are killing our economy because there are certain sectors of the economy that can't operate without the immigrant labor. And the first thing I thought was, in the mid 1800s in the South, they couldn't do agriculture without the slave labor.
There you go. And those immigrants are enslaved.
Exactly.
So the Democratic Party is actually the one that is the slave party today and was the slave party back then.
Just a different.
I'm a
plantation.
Republican, and I don't know what my ancestors, who've been here since the 1600s, I don't know what they believed. I've looked up in history and all that genealogy stuff to see if they actually owned slaves or had indentured servants. And a lot of people don't understand the piece that yes, there was slavery, but there was also a massive number of indentured servants. Yes, which were here, and that was a version of slavery in that sense.
And
some of them
also had sharecroppers, which are also another arm of the same thing.
Right, and to me, it's all slavery.
And
the Republicans,
of them stayed.
Yes, they did. They did.
In the plantation where they were free.
Right, because where else were they going to go? How they get paid, and sometimes they get paid less, and it was like not, So I mean, there's that balance. But the Republicans freed the slaves, right? And guess what? I'm a Republican, modern day conservative Republican, and I believe in freedom. And I believe in letting people be free to succeed and free to fail.
You probably believe in that Constitution thing.
It's a crazy thing. I don't know. We believe in the Constitution. Who knows about that? But no, there's not been a switch between, now the slavery party is the Republican party. And I mean, it's just like, and I told that lady, and I wrote to the lady, and she's a younger person, and I don't remember her name or wouldn't dox her that way. But she literally, I think she's just heard the talking points in the narrative.
And since they don't teach it in school anymore,
and that's part of the problem. And we let me give you a quick update. Well, I'd like to go to what we did in Walhalla yesterday, but let me give everybody a quick update because some people just like watching the beginning, find out what my status with my health issue is. So everybody knows I had cancer and all that kind of stuff. We're going through that, getting all that fixed. Except the lawyers would not admit that I had cancer, nor the judge. But the judge now has finally admitted after, I think, about $500 and maybe $700,000 in medical bills that I provided him, and 800 or 1,000 pages of medical diagnosis. He didn't believe all that, so he had me actually go get letters from 4 of my medical providers to say that in a clean sheet of paper that I actually had cancer. And he actually now believes it and has filed an order to that effect. So at least we're progressing forward in that. So they've at least admitted I have cancer, or the court has found that after, I think, about 6 months of them trying to determine whether I actually had cancer, and not believing the sworn affidavits and the sworn testimony I gave and the sworn affidavit I gave to that effect at our hearing back in November I think it was October or November of 24, when the judge said he didn't believe me and said I was in willful contempt of court, and ordered that if I didn't do certain things, namely pay the other parties $40,000, I was going to put me in 90 days of jail to start. So, I mean, if I couldn't comply after the 90 days, I'm sure he would re-up me for more time, which is
Then
the political process. Yes, that's what, that has been my joke, is that I should have had, the judge said, do you have any more questions? I meant to say, can I actually get 120 days? I can get the same amount Steve Bannon had, or maybe 121. Can you do that so I can one up him on that respect? So that's all progressing forward. But I will tell you, as everybody knows, I've gone through 4 rounds of chemo because I did not get a particular surgery that I should have done back in January of this year, which I actually, under sworn testimony, I told the judge I was working on getting scheduled, but it's pretty hard to schedule a surgery when you're worried about whether they're going to send the local sheriff or SLED to come break your door down and throw you in jail in Newberry for 90 days. You don't really want that. So my fault for not getting all that doctor stuff lined up. Hindsight's 2020. If I'd known then, I would have just progressed forward with what I'm doing now. But I do have a surgery scheduled in about 2 weeks. They wanted me to do 4 weeks of chemo because the cancer did come back. It came back because it was under 2 surgical clips on my ureter. That's where it grew back. My testing got it all down to 0. And there's a special test. And I like telling people about it because it's called the ctDNA, circulating tumor DNA test. And it's mapped to my particular cancer. And it's done by a company called Natera out of either California or Arizona. But Natera will map your tumor, and then it works for breast cancer, colon cancer, some things like that. But it's very out there and kind of on the cutting edge. And I was excited to have it because it's an early detection device. And so that's why I was able to see that it was coming back. And I think that was in January, and it grew back from underneath those surgical clips. So the chemotherapy that I had, and probably the other therapies I was going through, kind of beat it down to 0, which is called NED, no evidence of disease, which is the best case scenario you could have. And I literally got my blood test yesterday from the Signatera after 4 weeks of chemo, and I got NED, no evidence of disease. So it's quite frankly the power of prayer and everything that we've been doing on the regular side, the traditional medicine, and also on the alternative medicine, because we are believers in all of the above, and not really believers in the institutional industrial complex of medical field. But my cancer, and I've talked to a lot of people about it, a lot of it had kind of gotten a little bit too far out of control because I was one of those people that had no history of colon cancer in their family. And where does it come from? So my theory comports with a lot of what our people believe came from whatever we call food today, which is not really food. So it's a bunch of chemicals. So I have an iron stomach and I consume a bunch of stuff, and I don't really care, and I can eat anything, and probably too much McDonald's, like Donald Trump, and who God only knows what's in that stuff. So that's where I am. But I did that. It also had a laparoscopic operation back on April 3rd, where they actually put eyes on, went in there and looked, with the doctors, and they said it was best case scenario back then too. So it's all good, but the surgery I'm getting is a big one. They'll go in, cut me open, rip some stuff out, fix what they need to do, and hopefully that'll get the last up. Maybe we won't have to do this anymore.
We'll keep praying for you.
Well, I appreciate it. I am a big believer in the power of prayer. If you told me I tell people all the time, if you told me 10 years ago, power of prayer, I'd be like, yeah, what, really? I'm not so sure. I hear it, I read about it, but when you see it in action, I'm not saying I saw it in action on me with this stuff, but I've seen it in action since getting, quite frankly, involved in politics. And yes, you have seen it in action, and a lot of other people have. And I've seen it in action over all of this time period. So people will tell me, thank you for what you're doing, because, we do get hit with a lot of arrows and a lot of stuff. But you know what? I've got more in return of just having my eyes open to Christ and religion and God and the power of all of that, which is I'm not one of those people that wear it on my sleeve for political purposes like a lot of people do, but I'm a believer in that. I believe, as I tell people God's plan and God's time. So I don't know. I wish this time it would hurry up on a few things, but that's okay. There's a reason for everything, and that's why we keep pretty motivated, even when faced with adversity. There is a reason, and there is a learning experience out of it. So I hate to see other people suffer because of the lack of timing and not getting to where we want to be as fast as possible. But I do not get depressed or down or change my mind or slow down the effort and the work based on that. Because guess what? There is a reason. And I will tell you, in every adversity we faced, there's been a reason for it. There is a reason, and our friends in Pickens will tell you now, there's a reason Pickens was not seated by Drew McKissick. And maybe that reason was to wake people up and to let people know what's going on.
The tyranny of the
state party. I mean, they literally are accusing those guys of not following rules, while the SCGOP doesn't follow a single rule they ever want.
They followed it to the T.
Yeah, I know. I know all the parties involved, the prior administration, the current administration, people that were involved on the outside. And it's quite frankly one of the most amazing things to watch them sit there and talk about the fact that Pickens broke a rule when they can't follow a single. And we actually learned this week. Well, I'll leave that because it's stuff Pickens is working on, and I'll leave that to them. But I will tell you, back to kind of the Republican Democrat switch over time. There has been no switch. Republicans have believed in freedom since they freed the slaves, or the 13th Amendment, supported the 13th Amendment 100% in 1865. While the Democrats opposed it 77% in 1865. So fortunately, the Republicans won on that fight, and fortunately, the Republicans have won on a lot of fights today. But last night we went over, and Yvonne was asked to come speak for the Oconee County Republican Party, and so we went to Walhalla. And I will tell you, weirdly enough, I checked the time to drive there, and in the morning it's 40 minutes when you're going against traffic. It's an hour and 20 going with the traffic. So we got there on time, fortunately, but we were hoping to get there early to meet and talk with some people more. But it was a very good meeting. It's different. It's fun to go see how other counties handle their GOP meetings. I didn't know, but the chair over there, Barry Sanders, asked me to get up and introduce Yvonne, so I had to come up with her bio on the fly. Olga was the Vanna White holding up. Everybody knows Yvonne. Everybody knows Yvonne gets into the technical details, and she likes to have her flip charts and all that kind of stuff. I'm a guy that I'll print out some paper and hand it to everybody, but she's got her flip charts, and she had Vanna White go over there and hold that up. So
now that's her sister Olga White.
Olga
White.
Right? Olga White. That's right. And don't get that rumor started, because that'll be another thing. Sled will be knocking on my door. I hear you're married to your sister. No, I'm not that congresswoman who's married to her brother. That's right. Yes.
Yeah, you don't look like you anymore.
Yeah.
We got stuff from Alabama.
Yeah. Oh, which one are you talking about? Her or the
congressman?
Oh no, that's the one
from
that's
Somalia.
That's the one from Somalia. Omar, whatever her name is.
Ilhan
Omar.
She was the one that married her brother to get into the U.S.
Yes.
I thought that was against the law.
It's
It's Minnesota, so I don't know if it's against the law or not.
It's some sort of immigration fraud, if you ask me. But nobody follows up on it. She should be deported, and what do you do? And apparently that U.S. senator out in California that barged in on Tulsi
Padilla.
On what's her name?
Kristi Noem.
Kristi Noem. They slapped him in cuffs. But I saw part of the video, and I'm like, what is this guy doing? If I did that, they put me in cuffs.
Did you know what the police chief said?
No.
All he had to have was his U.S. Senator lapel pin on his collar.
Yes.
And he said we wouldn't have touched him.
Okay.
I think he did it on purpose.
He
no
probably
question.
He didn't wear it on
No
purpose.
question.
He probably did do it.
They
on
said he was
purpose.
coming from the congressional ball game. He wasn't actually coming from in the Capitol building.
Oh, really?
They said that's why he had his Senate T-shirt on.
Listen, not everybody knows who is who. I literally had somebody, and this is kind of cute. But we were at a presentation earlier this week, and I introduced myself to somebody, and she goes, "Are you the person that replaced Jeff Duncan?" I'm like, "No, I did not replace Jeff Duncan as the senator or as the congressperson in the 3rd Congressional District. That's Sherry Biggs." But then I joked with her. I said, "If you got any problems with Sherry Biggs, though, but you can call me or William Timmons or any other politician. You got a problem with, call me because I'd love to know."
Well, that's
So,
what, in North Carolina, we have the House and Senate members have a
yes,
specific,
they did.
it is a $10,000 fine to counterfeit one of those.
Oh,
And
really?
prison time.
Really?
That's
Yes.
that's how they walk into at the U.S. Senate. That's how they walk to the security guard. They
And-
can touch
and-
it as long as they have that pin on.
I've seen them walk around the security. I just figured they kind of knew them, but I guess if you have that pin,
If you have the pin, and the thing is, once you are a U.S. House or Senate member, you have that pin for life.
oh, really? So you can still get
Yes.
through.
And their wives have one too.
Okay, really?
Yeah.
How about the husbands? The husbands have one if Olga becomes a
I
congressperson?
would think so.
Yes, I would.
William Timmons only has, he said he's going to be there for 10 years. And I thought, is Olga, she'd be old enough to be a congressperson, right? You only had to be 27, I think, in the Constitution. President, you got to be 35.
We
There
there
it-
a congressman. I'll be 28.
28?
Olga's going to be busy. We're going to have her run against Drew next time.
If she's got,
Let's not dive away from
I've been studying that
She-
for years.
she does have to have voted in 2 out of 3. That's the only problem we got right now.
She has what?
You have to vote in 2 out of 3 Republican primaries. Now, if we can get,
Decide to register by party.
if we get registration by party, that would be interesting. How do they keep people out from running for state chair if you register by party and you register as a
So
Republican?
now,
But
we
that
will
was-
not
remember,
get
that was-
registered by party just for that reason.
What now?
We will not get the.
Yeah, we won't get
registration
registration by
for
party
that
just to
reason.
keep Olga out. So that's quite, that's, as we
So
know,
And
it's
if you
all
get
on her.
Olga, you get Jeff. That's what I'm saying. It's not like put Jeff out. But if you get Olga, you get Jeff.
It always bugged me that
2
they
for 1.
couldn't do it the way they did with students who just turned 18
yes.
and just grandfather them in because they had no way of having voted in those 2 previous primaries.
Well, that's like.
They should be able to do the same for somebody that, just became a U.S. citizen. And the first thing she did was register to vote. Okay.
And voted. I mean, that's the
That's what
whole
I'm trying
thing.
to
There's a
say.
lot of
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
that come to this country registered, and they want to fight for.
And you can maybe remind
America.
people how bad our immigration or the legal immigration checking system is. You can tell people story how the process works.
Which part? What do you mean?
How I became a citizen and went to register to vote, right?
Oh,
How
yeah.
No one.
Oh, there's
ever
nothing.
checked
Nobody
how
checked whether
actually
she was a citizen or not.
We kept asking, so I went literally from my swearing-in ceremony.
Directly to Conway's office.
I called, or Jeff called, it's like, what is the fastest way to register to vote? And they told us online. And the question was, well, isn't it faster to go to the office with the paperwork? And they said, no, it doesn't matter. So we were like, well, so if I register online, how do I get you the citizenship certificate, whatever it's called? They said, we don't need it. I'm like, what do you mean you don't need it? We have to get it to you somehow. They're like, no, there's nothing you have to do other than fill out the online application. So when you fill out the online voter registration, there is a little check mark that you mark that you swear under the
Penalty of perjury.
penalty of perjury that you are a citizen. But if you're not a citizen,
Do you care?
you know you already broke a law. Why would you care to just check that you're a citizen? That is literally their
There's no check.
test or their process of making sure you're a citizen. So I did that online and I received 3 voter registration cards in a week. Like day after day, they kept just coming and I have been registered since.
But you have 3 cards. You could have gone 3 times.
Well,
It was the same number, so yes.
Number, they're
Yeah.
just somehow keep mailing me.
They either- Their process may be to mail, and maybe they saw her name. They're like, "Oh my God, let's make sure we send her one." Because last thing I want to hear is Olga didn't get a registration card, and Jeff Davis is mad at him, and they do a good job.
I did not have to show any proof of being a citizen to anyone.
See, I thought we would have to go down there, or it would take longer if we did it online because they'd have to check to make sure she was a citizen. But if we came down there and showed her showed them her certificate, citizenship certificate, they could do it right away. But no, they didn't care. They didn't want to see it. They didn't need to see it. They're like,
But isn't that what is it the SAVE Act? Is that what that's supposed to fix? That you have
There
to
is
prove citizenship?
something.
Well,
I know they're
there's-
doing it in different areas, right? With schools, school enrollment and stuff. I think there is some process.
But in federal elections, that's the act that they were trying to push through was that you had to prove citizenship
To vote
federal
in the
elections.
presidential,
Right,
House
any
of
federal-
Representatives, or
any federal
Senate.
election,
Yeah.
Well, we
'Cause-
just found yesterday the 20,000 or 22,000 that came from China. They just uncovered that.
Oh, and that's
They kept
just.
digging and found that.
it's probably the tip
One
of the
of the people who was
iceberg.
talking about that yesterday said that they feel that the 20 to 25,000 driver's licenses
Yes,
that
that's
were
what they
printed
said.
and sent in from China is probably just the tip of the pyramid.
Wow.
Yeah.
I go back to 2020.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
2020.
That's where somehow Joe Biden got 8 million more votes than anybody else has ever gotten for president
Until now.
More than people were registered.
in some states.
So one thing, the application process, one thing illegal immigrants, they're already breaking the law, but half probably of them cannot speak English or read English.
They would sign up. I believe if they're probably signing up to register to vote and can't even read. They're checking a box. They don't know that the box actually says you're swearing under penalty of perjury, right? So that would be the other thing. If they can't read it, they're just somebody sitting here at the Democratic headquarters, and they say, "Oh, come in, just click, and just hit enter there." That person doesn't even know what's going on.
That was an eye-opener.
Well, we found some interesting things doing voter research on addresses with 400 voters registered at the same address.
That stuff's out there.
And it's a corner lot at one of the universities. It's actually a vacant lot.
That stuff's out there.
So it wasn't a dorm, it was,
What was that, UNC?
No, actually, that was at Appalachian State.
Oh, really? Wow.
You
Interesting.
saw what happened with Western Carolina this week, the big expose.
Mhm.
Oh yeah, their HR director, manager, whatever, they called her on tape saying, "This is how we're going to work around the DEI exception.
Oh, really?
We're going to
Yes.
use this word because diversity and equity and equitable treatment and inclusion is the root of the human." I'm trying to think what it said, the human code. And I'm like, yeah, we just passed we passed a state law that says the same thing.
Listen, they're working around all day long, and it's frustrating. And we have a friend that is taking their son on the college tours, right? And they went up to Vanderbilt and said at Vanderbilt, everywhere were the transgender flags, everywhere, all hanging out
Well,
with
because
kids'
it's Pride
windows
Month.
and all that stuff. Yeah, I guess so. It's Pride Month. So you got all this stuff at Vanderbilt, and he said, fortunately, my son has heard us talking enough about it. He's like, I'm not coming here.
yeah.
But I mean, it's deep in the universities,
Same
and it's
thing-
deep in
same
the
thing
administration.
happens at Wake Forest. I had a friend whose daughter, he's a Wake Forest law school graduate,
Right.
lives in Shelby, where I do. And he was so excited that his daughter wanted to follow in his footsteps and go to Wake Forest. And the first trip he made up there, not before she went in, but the first trip after she was actually in the school, he said he gets up there and the whole main boulevard that leads into Wake Forest University had alternating American flags and pride flags all the way down the road.
Well, yeah.
So he reached out to the university and said they would never see another one of his $25,000 or $50,000 checks, and his daughter would be leaving the university at the end of the semester.
I mean, I just got done with my Clemson orientation, and they were walking us through all the principles of the university. And it went patriotism, something else, and then diversity. They asked us what we thought patriotism was. It wasn't service to the American people. But they sure did harp on the diversity part of it.
Really?
Yeah. All these different types of people we need to celebrate all of it's like, we have to brush over the fact that it's a military institution that was built to create the next generation of soldiers and leaders to defend our nation. Ignore that. Let's focus on diversity instead.
Where was that? Sedgwick? Where
Clemson.
was
Just like Clemson. That's where I'm going to college.
State-supported school, land grant school.
Land Grant University. It's meant to be there to keep grow our economy.
A lot of people don't know, but Clemson was founded as a military school.
Yeah.
When Strom Thurmond went there, it was a military school. it was just like the Citadel and all that kind of stuff, and it eventually
And it
turned
was all
into Fort
mill,
Mag.
and then it transformed into manufacturing and agriculture.
Yeah, and they broke down the small groups. They asked, what do you guys think all these principles mean? And they could be going on and on about what diversity meant. But now I got the patriotism section. I was the only one who said anything about it. Which
You're
was
probably the
weird.
one that didn't do anything about it.
It was like, patriotism isn't, oh, I'm happy to be in America. Patriotism is, I'm going to serve my community. I am proud of my heritage, good and bad. We've made mistakes, but I owe this nation my life, and I'm going to serve it. No one else said anything really near to that. They don't understand it. That's just how it is now, and it's disgusting.
It's a big problem, and it's part of the narrative, and it's part of the long-term plan that the communist, Marxist, whatever, they got a 100-year plan, and it's simple. Think about it: infiltrate the universities. They infiltrated the public schools. Now they've infiltrated the universities, infiltrate the church, infiltrate all that type of stuff. One of the things that we obviously know the issues with where they try to dumb down everybody because they want a bunch of worker bees. So, and we talked about it, dumb them down. Well, take the flip side of it. What are they doing with the smart kids? That's the AP classes. That's all of that stuff.
And they are pure communist propaganda.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, anybody, we're working in my state too. I've got several House members that are saying we need to just eliminate all of the current AP curriculum. Most people have it's just been.
They have no idea.
The AP curricula is generated and now provided by an organization called the College Board, a nonprofit who you cannot get financial records on. And the estimate now is that they're approaching $1 billion a year in income just from the test cost for AP classes. It was $738 million in 2018 or 19.
It's a lot of income.
Uh-huh.
That pays, look up what probably the heads of those groups make and the salaries. And that's a big part of the problem with NGOs. They are money-making machines, and especially when they can get government contracts to do stuff. And that's what I think Doge and all those guys are trying to expose and tie it all together. But it's so guys like me, I'm a tax guy, right? So, we knew how to move things around and do all that kind of stuff. But there's guys like me on the other side that are doing things to hide where the money's going. It's like money laundering. You wash it through a nonprofit, and it doesn't show up in the records that are going through that Curtis Loftus and or the comptroller would have. So if they put, we gave $1 million to this nonprofit, you don't have any of the details after that. Because I was actually talking to somebody about that in regards to some other things we're working on here locally. And I'm like, yeah. And it was one of those things. I'm like, if we track back the money, then I said, I think Curtis Loftus has some backdoor, some ways to find that. I know the comptroller has some ways to find that. But then I started thinking, well, they just dumped all of it in a big mass total into a nonprofit. We don't have the detail on that. That's not foiable because it's a 501c3 nonprofit. We can't get to it. That's not quite right, but that's what somebody probably like at college, Western Carolina or whatever, said, hey, this is how we're going to get around it.
Well,
So all these public-private partnerships, that's what it is. Put the money over there, and then it's in.
The reaction for years to coming out of the industrial world that I did, which is the reason it went away, was because of government regulation. And there are industries out there that were built to do workarounds on federal regulations that should have never been in place to start with.
Look at the Clinton Foundation. It was all, pig
Well,
in the saying.
$500 million. Come on,
It's enough to feed a lot of stuff that's going.
For her daughter's wedding.
They had a GoFundMe for
Well,
Chelsea
that's
Clinton.
what the Clinton fund was.
Activism.
GoFundMe for the.
Foundation footed the bill.
and also for the $900,000 a year salary she started drawing right after she graduated from college.
I wish my mom had been Secretary of State and a U.S. Senator, and Dad had been president. Have a $900,000 job, sitting here sleeping all day. But that's what we're fighting and all that kind of stuff. But back to what we went to Oconee County last night. The reason was, and it just, I guess by happenstance, was Juneteenth. So it became an appropriate conversation to have. But I don't know if many people know, Coney, after Yvonne gave her presentation, which was technical and also is part of what we preach and teach, is about the mental manipulation. You know, if you had to guess, you think, you know, cops kill more blacks or whites in just shooting them, you know, whatever, committing a crime or whatnot. Most people think blacks, and everybody there, you know, would think it was black. That's the narrative. But she showed the chart. It's more whites.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you ask the question, you know, because I kind of remember this from the old days. You know, how many do you think there's more blacks on public assistance or whites? There's a whole lot more whites on public assistance.
Because 70% of the population is white.
Yes.
And
But the
13%
narrative
black.
is
Makes sense.
right, but it does to the logical thinking person. But the narrative
Well,
that's
thank you.
out
That's
there.
awful kind of-
You're a logical thinking person. I
Well,
appreciate
that
it.
means that you were actually taught math.
I'm not sure. Are there more blacks in prison than whites? Maybe. I don't know. That might
There's more illegals on the public assistance than there were blacks and whites combined, probably.
probably, yes.
Mhm.
You know, and look
In one way or another.
Yeah.
Well, that is scary that we're 70% of the population, but there's still more blacks in prison. That's.
But that's the flip side of the narrative that they're trying to convince people that
That there
That
are
blacks
more
are-
there are more blacks in prison because we're racist and oppressive, and we want to put the
right.
blacks.
So
in
they'll
prison.
use
A few years ago-
they'll make up the statistics in one way or get you to think it's a different way when it suits their purposes, and then they'll use the statistics to say that we're racist and prejudiced and
A
all
few
that kind of
years
stuff.
ago, when I was working in the jails in Montgomery County, Maryland, it used to be
Bless your
that way.
heart.
And before I left, there was more Hispanics in there than blacks.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
And then you go to a city like Charlotte, North Carolina, where unless it's a major offense, the police officer will not, or the sheriff's officer or police officer, because the jail is run by the sheriff, they won't waste the time to take an illegal to jail unless he commits a class C, I think they said, offense, because they take him to the jail. The sheriff will have him back out on the streets before the cop can finish doing the paperwork for taking him to jail.
So I asked him, I said, why is this? What's happening? He said, because of the gangs. There's more gang activity than.
Well, yeah,
Which is a perfect segue into why we were over in Oconee speaking, or Yvonne was over there in Coney speaking, because there is a woman named Larisha Thompson. She was 41 years old, mother of two, and she was brutally murdered in Lancaster County, South Carolina on May 2nd.
Yep.
Has anybody heard of this?
I have.
You've heard about it 'cause
You
get the
Lancaster
Charlotte
is basically a
Yes,
suburb
subsidiary.
of Charlotte.
Right.
So
Yeah, so
Anybody else? No. 41-year-old. She was, and let me read exactly what I wrote out here, because that's what they did. Yvonne talked about that because she was a conservative. She had conservative leanings. It was a gang of 6 guys or 6 people,
all illegals.
all illegals from Honduras. It was a fitting discussion.
Age?
3 of which have never had their name.
Everywhere from 13 to 21.
3 of which have not had their name revealed because they're under 16 and
Right.
under.
Right.
They murdered her, and we haven't heard anything about it, predominantly in the mainstream media. Where's the outrage from Black Lives Matter, or the NAACP, or any of that
I
type of
understand
stuff?
she was like a light post in her community too.
And literally, I think they somehow tracked these people because the same bullet had been used in a crime at a liquor store a week earlier. So
Oh, and at Walmart too.
there are illegals that are here because the Biden administration let them in. Only way they can feed themselves, I guess, is to go steal stuff.
So was it random?
I don't know how she particularly.
She was driving home from a friend's house, and somehow they stopped her, pulled over.
I think from what I understood, they basically pulled right up beside her, sort of at a red light. and just-
Something, and then robbed her car or whatever.
Yeah.
and got killed. Like-
So they didn't know she was a conservative, but the fact is she is a conservative, and because she's a conservative, nobody says anything. Because it's illegals, nobody on that side says anything. And normally, if it was reversed or something, how are they going to
If
look
it was
at
me
it?
or you, we'd
Yeah,
be on
we'd
the
be
front
all-
page of every newspaper.
It's like what we witnessed here, 10, 12 years ago, it started around here, where the news media, if they were talking about an armed robbery at a bank,
race was
They
never
would say,
mentioned.
if it was a white guy, they'd say. But if it was a black guy, they say
wouldn't say.
large, 5'10",
That's right.
They never tell.
They can't figure out what they want to do,
Yeah.
how to spin it,
But it's
whatever.
always been pretty disgusting.
Yeah, it is, and the whole, but the impetus, the discussion part of it was really, number one, the manipulation by the fake news media and all of these groups out there, and they actually, as part of their resolution, and we'll post it out there, or it is actually on our Greenville GOP Facebook page, the pictures from last night and the actual resolution. But I mean, they condemned the South Carolina Democratic Party. Coney actually went that step, is condemn them, and obviously for us, it's the Biden administration, and what they did of now what Trump is saying is let in 21 million illegals,
And they don't have any clue what the actual number is.
Yeah. So I mean, that's the last number I hear him talking about lately. I'd heard 9 million, then I heard 16 million, then 21 million. But again, we all know, and we all heard the Democrats say, guess what? We need a czar, so they got their czar. She didn't do anything, and then then they needed legislation to stop it. Have we had any legislation?
No, all we need was the president to determine that.
I don't think any legislation has been passed about it, as far as I'm aware.
There hasn't.
But in the month of May, guess how many illegals came in?
Zip.
Zero. Literally zero.
Well, let me clarify. 0 illegals were released by Custom and Border Protection.
Right.
There's still some areas at the
They're trying.
border where I'm sure there are getaways, but from what I understand, what Homan and trying to think the other gentleman's name had done, the amount of personnel they now have on the southern border, there are very few sections where there's not.
Somebody eyes on
Military's down there.
would have gone.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Military down there too.
There were 8,600 that hit the border.
This is a very good point you're making here.
Speak loud so they can hear you.
There's sufficient laws that have already
Yes.
been passed. You don't need more legislation on
Right.
this and that. Learn the law, show up and report when they're not supporting the law. We're talking about
Yeah.
whether it's Secretary of State or whatever agency it is.
My saying is, where there's a will, there's a way.
But
I
we
will
gotta
find a
have
way to
people-
do it
Workaround.
if I got a will to do it.
we
They
need
didn't have a
more
will.
eyes on the legislature
Right.
to enforce them, to enforce the law now. We don't need another.
It's
But even the same thing with Drew. Drew keeps getting away with all this stuff he does. I mean, he's probably done something to everybody in this room. I know Jeff and I personally.
Yeah.
And why are we standing there saying, how can you do that? How can you, why is he getting away with it?
why was Alan Wilson and Pamela Vett sitting at the state convention this year, watching what was being hammered down on Pickens and all the other things that they did,
And they sat there.
and then just sat there and said nothing. One of our people actually asked Pamela Vett about it. I didn't put him up to it. He just went over and asked, said, "Are you okay with what's going on?"
Did
Yeah.
she not know?
Oh, she pretended. She said, "Oh, I don't really know what's going on."
I'm really not in the loop
And
on
she
that.
tried. He walked away. And he's like, "Well, then, obviously, you don't need to be the governor of the state if you don't understand this simplicity." It's and
That's pretty good.
and he actually, she came over to him later, trying to convince him of stuff, and she's like, "You're not going to convince me. I mean, say something." I have reached out to Pamela Vett about what's going on with that stuff and said things to her, and she doesn't want to. She wants to put her head in the sand because she wants their support politically to get elected, as opposed to be a leader. Leaders lead.
Now, what about William Timmons? Was he there?
No, he wasn't there.
Should have been there.
He's smart enough to stay away from it. He probably knows what's going on, but he's smart enough to stay away from that type of stuff.
Which is
Now-
actually
now-
good in a congressman.
Well, it'd be better to get involved and fix it in some senses, but
But the
not
national
standing
government-
there
the
watching
national
it.
government really doesn't have a place in that. That's
I mean,
the other
even
thing.
Trump
Not
knows what's
particularly.
going on. How can Trump know what's going on? And nobody from between him and here.
Well, I think they know, and I think they,
Convenience.
the dam is going to break at some point in time. I can't believe anybody wants Drew McKissick to be running the SCGOP when we are having the 2028 presidential preference primary. Because guess what? Is Drew going to be supporting a Trump type or Donald Trump himself if he runs in 2028?
The biggest thing
Could
is
be
we gotta have
RNC.
somebody that can beat him. We've
Yes,
got to.
I know.
We got to work from them till then.
Right.
Now till then.
And it's not necessarily the person, we got to have the numbers. We could literally run a chair for chair, if we have the numbers. And the problem is we haven't had the numbers. They're willing to vote for anything.
We had
The other
same
side
thing 2 weeks
is voting for whatever because it's Drew, not because they support Drew it's just their team, if you will.
Because they want to go
Drew-
to RNC.
They want to go orange.
Because Drew has gotten so many Republicans elected to state legislature of the supermajority. This should be the best state in the union.
Yeah,
That's
it's
why
blue.
they vote for
But
Drew.
they're not Republican.
And
Even though the representative they gave Legislator of the Year award to has an abysmal conservative record.
and I was having a discussion with somebody the other day. It's like South Carolina, we could be leading, right? We got a super majority. Some states are out there leading. Obviously, Florida's out there doing some stuff. Tennessee will get out there and out front and do some things. I don't mind us leading and getting out there. We may make mistakes, but I think we can lead and actually get it right. South Carolina is like the opposite.
Right.
We literally are the last, and then we're the last, and we screw it up. We can't even copy what they do.
Yeah.
There's how many states that have school choice, the Republican or conservative school choice? 25, 27. We were late to that game. It took them 10 or 12 years to pass anything. And we literally have the nation's worst school choice program. Literally the nation's worst school choice program. And it's documented. Everybody knows it. Everybody points a finger at it. And you can't, they don't do anything.
The legislation around that issue and a lot of issues is a shell game.
Yes.
It's just a shell game. They know it's not gonna be approved in this area. They put a poison pill or something. And it's this thing to keep your eye on that and forget about the real issue. How are you helping the kids? How are you helping the education?
Kids are the last thing
last
any
thing.
of those people
All they want to do is
are
dumb them
thinking
down.
about. Right.
So they'd love you to come down and play politics on the issues. Oh, we're gonna pass this legislation. It has nothing to do with where it's going.
That's why
This man needs more help.
That's why our plan is take back the party for the people. That's all 46 counties. That's your own personal precinct. So you can work your own personal precinct to be part of that pyramid that we need to build up. You can sit here and complain about it, all day long. We can complain about every legislative thing goes in there. And my question to you is, well, have you gone and won your precinct? Did you bring 25 people to your precinct reorg? And are you the EC or president? Are you building your precinct? Well, I hadn't done that. Well, quit complaining. It's like not, you complain, oh, well, did you vote? It's actually more than did you vote? Because there's 3 pieces to it. There's reorg. When you're a patriot, we talked about that being a patriot the other day, earlier. You're a patriot if you vote, obviously in November. More importantly, if you vote in the primaries, and even more important than that is if you participate in your local party, in your precinct reorg every 2 years. I don't care if you just come out and vote for somebody who's willing to be crazy enough, like me or Olga's our precinct president, or crazy enough to get out there and get involved and do things. At least show up and support the MAGA America First person in your precinct. Well, then which will go to your county, support the MAGA America First people in your county, which go to the state, which end up going to the national RNC, to the big boys. That's the way it builds. These parties, Republican and Democrat, all of them, are based on the bottom up. But if the bottom doesn't participate, guess what you're going to get? Top down, and you're going to get these people that know the rules, flaunt the rules, cheat the rules, make up the rules, write the rules, put their poison pills in the rules. So like, oh yeah, that does say this. But we have this rule that says it's the spirit. It's not the letter of the rule, it's the spirit of the rule. Now, what our plan is, number one, take the party back. So we have the bully pulpit of the voice of the people. And we can go out there and say, hey, guess what? This is the good Republican and this is the bad one. That's a bad example. This is the good Republican. That's the bad one. He's from North Carolina. I gotta satisfy my Greenville people.
Hey, just a question though. After the sham bitching we experienced this year, why is it impossible to get Michael Whatley and them to apply pressure to South Carolina to say we're invalidating your whole state convention?
Because
you need to do it over again.
The RNC operates and is an operational unit of the RNC committee. The committee, Michael Watley is not the committee.
He's the chair.
He's the chair. The committee is the 167.
68.
Okay,
I think it's
167.
168.
And that is the national committee man, national committee woman, and state chair of all 50 states. And then there's six or
Some of these other
seven.
little things.
So could it
Territory.
actually be a worse situation than we've got in the state executive committee right now?
Yes.
Where they could evict our state
yeah.
EC from being able to attend meetings
Yes.
that he was voted
Yes.
to attend.
Yes. So think about this. So say in 2023, we had scraped up an extra 14 votes and I'd been elected SCGOP chairman.
Okay.
I'm the chairman. Guess what the first meeting would have been about? We don't control the state executive committee, the 50 voting members. They would have said, we vote Jeff Davis out, even though he's chairman, he can't come to the meeting.
We're going to impeach him.
Or we're going to take
Put him up.
or the salary down to zero. There were some people, other people that were wanting to be chair of the SCGOP that literally thought, one of the people thought they were going to be making what Drew makes. I'm like, you really think you're going to make $250,000, which was the rumor at the time? You think you're going to make that? The first vote, if it had been me, it would vote me out. The second vote would have been make the salary probably negative $250,000. I had to pay them to even be the chair, right? So, and I'm like, what do you think? You think these people are going? No, they have the power. It's just like with us. There's 151 precincts. I might be the chair of Greenville County Republican Party, but the ECs set policy, and they can vote on stuff. They can put up a motion to do certain things. That's where the power and the policy resides. That's the problem with the RNC. There's 168 of them. Mike Watley doesn't control them all. Rona McDaniel probably did, and Drew McKissick. But if you think Drew McKissick he's been there, probably one of the longest serving chairs has been on that 168. He's been there 10 years, right? Or 8 years,
Well,
whatever it might be.
There's some that are in there 20 and 25
Is
years.
it that
Yeah.
really?
There's
But
state executive
committee. I think he's one of the longest serving chairmen.
Yeah.
I think the average tenure for a chair,
4 years.
I actually heard it was a year and a half, like not even a full term.
Mm.
So it could be 4, it could be whatever it is, but it's not really
So it
long.
just
Some of these
reinforces the
ECs are
South
there for
Carolina
20
blue
years.
thing.
Yes, it's
Yes,
part of it.
okay.
But imagine if he's one of the longest serving chairs, and I get the ECs have been there, some of them have been there longer. But imagine, every time a new person gets elected, he's over there hobnobbing them and talking to them at the big RNC meetings and filling them with a bunch of
He's
bunch
on
of
to talk
BS.
to the other 167. That's where the 167.
Right. Yes. He talks to the other 160. He actually, think about this. When Mike Watley ran for vice chair, it would have been January 2 years ago, 4 years ago. Four. He was endorsed by Trump. His opponent was Drew McKissick,
Right.
and they voted for Drew McKissick over Trump's endorsement.
Well, that's because Michael wasn't connected with enough consultants.
Correct. That was part of the problem back then. Now, obviously, when Trump put the hammer down in February of 2024 and said, Rona, you're out, Drew, you're out, Mike Watley, you're in, and Laura Trump was in as co-chair, then, he put the hammer down.
And totally changed the whole operational structure
Yes.
of the party.
And I don't think anybody disagrees that if Rona McDaniel and Drew McKissick had been running the RNC, Trump would not be elected today.
We'd have President Neha.
Kamala.
Knee pads.
All right, it's a children's show. Okay, I'm kidding. But I mean, nobody disagrees with that. I mean, probably even the people that voted for Drew to be SCGOP chairman. Oh, he's the most winningest Republican Party state chair, yada, yada, yada. He's the most winningest because he put anybody in there or convert them from a Democrat to a Republican. And it was funny and it was very obvious at the state. Drew said it at some speech. He was either at the convention or something else that the party can coordinate. Obviously, we can coordinate with candidates. But the party can also, and we're checking the legal side on this, can coordinate with the PACs that are out there.
Mhm.
A PAC can't coordinate with a candidate, but they can coordinate with the party, and the party can coordinate with the candidate.
And that's how it's done all over. I mean, I can tell you, I've watched that happen.
All right. But, that's where the deals are cut, the money's flowed, and all that kind of stuff. And Drew's probably gone to the certain PACs that want certain things and say, give us some money, we'll get this guy elected. and one of the loudest voices at the state party convention on May 3rd. Interestingly enough, the day after they killed Letitia Thompson. I didn't really connect those two numbers, but he, was a guy, J.D. Chapman. He was the chair of Darlington. He ran for state senate and won and beat that the Democrat down there. What was his name? Beat that Democrat, which is fantastic. It's a pickup, got another seat. But JD was down there at the mic praising Drew McKissick like you would not believe. I mean, we're all 100%. I mean, he was loud, proud. I mean, I thought he was on a radio show. He was a booming voice about it and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, yeah, because he cut a deal, and it's like, and you can kind of see it. And you can see if when you follow these things and you know the people and you see how the tides shift and where it's all going, you can kind of, you can see it. You can really, really see it. And we could see it with that. And that was part of his payback. Oh, I'll come to the convention and I'll, reference you and tell everybody how great you are.
My endorsement and
and it's like you're just sitting there watching it, and it's like it's happening right in front of our faces. In what our side of the ledger has found it very hard to believe and understand is that this stuff goes on because either they haven't seen it themselves, or they have it, or they don't believe people do these types of things,
or most of them have to work for a living, so they really don't have the time.
Or they don't have the time. And then they'll say, for people like us that sit there and tell them, hey, guess what? This is what's going on. They'll say, oh, you're just a little bit of a conspiracy theorist. You're you're always trying to find something.
You know what they say the difference between conspiracy and a fact is?
6
About
months.
6 months.
Yeah, I know. And we watched it, and we have to deal with this situation coming out of Lexington with that John Allen and those guys, because John Allen was with Lexington, and Pamela Godwin was here last week, but John Allen was literally part of the coup to kick out Pamela Godwin, and that coup was in cooperation with the SCGOP and the South Carolina Freedom Caucus to get rid of her. The same coup that the SCGOP and the South Carolina Freedom Caucus were doing to get rid of us in 2023, and the same people that were involved in the 2021 reorg fraud. So, I mean, but they're against Drew. I'm like, Jeff's a conspiracy theorist because he says the Freedom Caucus is working with Drew. Freedom Caucus, Super Rhino, that doesn't make any sense. We like to believe what the Freedom Caucus is telling us, or at least their leadership, but who's the dark money behind all that type of stuff? And it's just amazing, it's just, we got to figure out a better way to connect the dots. We got to connect those dots faster. And then we got to hold people accountable. And a lot of people, don't want to do it, but people are now waking up to it, which is fantastic. But the John Allen gentleman out of Lexington, he literally, he's now on the outside because he either woke up and realized, oh my God, we are actually working with Drew, but he knew it already, right? But he did run for chair and challenge Mark Weber, who was the other person who was Pamela's first vice chair that stabbed her in the back, which is always quite interesting how it's the first vice chair that always does that. It's kind of like a Roman novel. Caesar. I'm like, I'm first vice chair, so I'm going to stab you in the back, and then I get to move up. Doesn't always work that way, but it worked that way with him. And then, he crosswise, well, now that we're here, I don't need you, John Allen, anymore. Because he has his own, they have their own little, political ambitions. But what has he done now that he's on the outside? He spoke up at the convention on behalf of Pickens. Like he was the hero. He was going to come in there, and he's a good orator. He can speak and do all that kind of stuff. So he comes in there and talks all this good stuff about Pickens. So Pickens like, oh, this guy's defending us, and this guy's putting stuff on social media defending us. This is great. And he shows up to speak at their little thing last Saturday, and I'm like, he's sitting there defending y'all against Drew when he was literally the person working with Drew, stabbing in the back of the America First people in Lexington. Where are we not connecting the dots? They will figure it out very quickly because the proof is all right there. But you had somebody come into a meeting and say some good things, and they sound really good. Adam Morgan says some good things, and he sounded really good when he gets up there and talks. And good little viral video that you can kind of put out there. But then when you do a deeper dive, you're like, oh my God, he's funded by dark money from Jim DeMint down to Yao and American Freedom Action Fund or whatever, doing all this kind of stuff. We've got to figure that out. That's the hard work. That's what you got to sit there and pause for a moment. Don't jump on every red meat type thing somebody says and go for it. So
I can tell you it happens in other states.
yes, it's everywhere. This is the game, but that's the game. That's what Yvonne was talking about in regards to this lady's murder. It's the fake news media, and it's all, all those NGOs and all that type of stuff. It's all in politics. And I will tell you guys, if you have not seen it, they are now streaming The Apprentice on Prime. There's like 7 or 8 seasons of The Apprentice and 7 or 8 seasons of the Celebrity Apprentice. You will learn more about, number one, the human condition than you would ever want to know. To watch, you got 16 people that come in and watch them work together and nice, and then they stab each other in the back, and it's like crazy. So you learn that, and then you can learn, you learn a few business things too, which is quite interesting. Nobody ever seems to focus on what the client actually tells you they want to do. They want to do what they want to do. But then the flip side is you get to see what Donald Trump was about. I never watched The Apprentice. I read the book, The Art of the Deal, when I was in college. So that's when I was sold, and it's a very educational book, and I actually made Olga read it. But it's like, this is Olga knew him from The Apprentice, and I'm like, holy cow, this is like, it's gold. It really is gold on multiple senses. You can see the manipulation people do to kind of jockey in the boardroom. You can see how Donald Trump thinks through that and tries to look past that and see who is actually trying to manipulate the situation and all that kind of stuff. And you can actually see a lot of his patriotism too. It was way back there. He talks about that example, that Woolman rink, that ice skating rink. That's, if you look at where his building, Trump Tower, was built in, I think, 83. Mm-hmm. He's got those top 3 floors at the top. Literally look straight down at that Woolman rink. I mean, I can imagine sitting there in my den for 4 years, for years, saying, what is wrong with those people? We all do it. I mean, they're literally fixing a bridge on the street next to us. Oh, it was going to be blocked off for a week. Now, then Olga tells me yesterday, they extended it another week. Maybe they'll get it done in 2 weeks. But we're sitting there, he looked at it for years and saying, I can go do that in about 3 months or a month, or however long he took.
Well, that was, if you haven't watched the whole 3 hours of the Joe Rogan interview with Donald Trump,
but I haven't. I watched.
You should. And yes, it's a lot easier to break it up into 20-minute segments or whatever. But you will learn the brilliance of our president, because they were talking about something, and Rogan said something. He said, well, you need this type of concrete and this type of rebar and this to build that. And they flash back over to Rogan. You can see a look on his face like, how do you know the hell do you know that?
Right. I mean, Tucker Carlson literally, I don't know if I necessarily agree with what he did and how he did it, but he asked Ted Cruz how many people lived in Iran, and he didn't know, and it's 90-some-odd million people.
92.
I had to look it up because Trump's in there saying evacuate Tehran. Olga and I were sitting there like, how many people live in Tehran? It's like 9.7 million people.
Yeah,
he told 9.7 million people to get the heck out of the city, because I think he's going to nuke the damn darn thing, and I'd be like, how do you get 10 million people out of a city overnight? I would have been gone.
I think that's why he. And I was thinking the same thing. I think, and that's why he just announced, what was it, yesterday, that he's going to take a 2-week delay, and that should give Tim Miniping time.
Get to your vacation house.
Get to wherever you go. Find you a nice tent in the desert, but you want to be out of there.
The way he put it was not an exact 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Yes.
He said within the next 2 weeks.
2 to 3 weeks, didn't he say?
No, he said within the next 2 weeks.
Within the next 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So,
I'd still get out.
But that's like when he said 60 days, and now he said 60
tomorrow. It could be a week from now.
Yeah. He leaves his options open. It may be.
It's called being a smart negotiator.
He is perfect at what he's doing.
Diplomacy, still trying diplomacy, still.
I hope he gets that guy to come meet him at the White House. I don't care. Who wouldn't do that? I love seeing him talk at the G7. They're like, and he's like, how are you going to solve the world's problems when you kicked out, it used to be the G8, kicked out the Russian guy because you didn't like him? He's got influence. And then one of the reporters is out there and said, he said, well, should we let China? Should it be the G9? And he's like,
We need to
That's a
talk
great
about it.
idea,
We need to
yes.
talk about it. Yep.
We need to talk about it. Maybe they need to be there. How are you going to solve the problems if they're not at the table? How do we solve our problems locally with the splinters and the rhinos who won't come to the table and actually sit down and talk because they don't want to solve the problem?
No, because
They
the problem
won't-
is
they-
they're what they feed on.
Right. They feed on the problem. They feed on the deception of saying, "Oh, Jeff bad. I'm the real patriot." Are you kidding me? I mean, you're working. I mean, it's like our splinter group. I mean, we were sitting there saying when they were first doing all their crazy stuff, trying to undermine everything we do, I'm like, they're working with Drew and Nate and all those people. Oh no, that can't be going on. You go look at them now. They're openly on Facebook talking to Nate and talking about Drew. And their only thing they're mad at Drew about is the fact that Drew hasn't come in here and shut us down. That's the only thing they're mad
They
about.
must be the same people that were on the thread that I
Yeah,
commented on.
that's the same people you were talking to. That was posting stuff about me and calling me the devil.
And you, for the sake of myself and whoever is listening, I mean, you talked about this, the Freedom Caucus, working with Drew, you know, and the Lexington County thing and all that. Could you get into that a little bit deeper, kind of give us some receipts if somebody's asking about that or we're trying to explain about that? How would they, because that sounds like treason if you call yourself the Freedom Caucus, being anti-MAGA.
Well, there's multiple parts. Yes, we can and we should document it a
Yeah.
little, like bullet. The short story would be, look at how we founded mySCGOP. We came out in January of 2021. We announced it and had our first meeting literally on January 21st, the day after Biden was nominated. It was the darkest of inaugurated, yes, the darkest of darkest times, right? And Bannon and those guys all talk about it. Nobody, we were the wacky people. We were the election deniers. We were blah, blah, you know, everybody that didn't have any guts was running away and hiding and all that kind of stuff. Not us. We announced that day. That's when we rolled it out. And it was about reorg of 2021. Who were the people opposing us? Who was, I mean, we put it out, we got to put it out on the Signal chat or whatever. We could document it too. But, you know, and then there's a full report about the fraud. But the report only named Nate Loip, who is Adam Morgan, Freedom Caucus founder and chair. It was Nate Loip who was the only person named in the report. But obviously, and Stephen Brown and the committee did that and talked about the fraud. But think about it. Nate Loip did not do it by himself. Stephen Brown, in his report, came out with all that stuff, and I was chair at the time, and we vetted him and asked him to, you know, come in and replace Presley after he died or was murdered by, you know, the doctors of COVID on August 19th.
Murdered by Fauci.
But what I asked Stephen to do, I said, finish the report, put the other names in there. He refused to do it because he wants their support. He was working with them and all that kind of stuff. So he was refusing to do it. I've actually debated whether we should do a special committee this term to say, go back and finish that report and put the names in there. We got the documentation. Adam Morgan was out. It told all of our people he knew nothing about the cheating. We got the documentation that shows Adam Morgan was out door knocking, collecting harvested ballot Form 1s. He was personally doing it. So that's all in January through April of 2021. The reorg fraud and all that kind of stuff. And we fought it and we won, and that we persevered through that. So that's where part of our trial by fire. When did they found the Freedom Caucus? May of 2022. It was the same people that participated in the reorg fraud of 21 that was at their opening little dinner or whatever. You know, I mean, and it's like, are we not connecting the dots? There's Jennifer Black and all these same people down there participating in that type of stuff. I'm sure. But yeah, the reason they founded the Freedom Caucus was to go against mySCGOP, because we were sucking up all the air talking about, you know, the South Carolina platform, the rhinos down at the State House, all that kind of stuff. They founded it to really counter to us But who then was funding it? Think about who was funding it. Jim DeMint. Jim DeMint with the Conservative Partnership Institute out of D.C. Jim DeMint, the founder of Palmetto Promise Institute. Jim DeMint, who was our former congressman from here in the fourth, yes, and then senator from South Carolina that had left to make more money at Heritage Foundation and open up a spot, put Tim Scott in there, who Palmetto Promise named their little school choice initiative under Tim Scott's father or mother or whichever one. They're all tied in it together, but where's that money come from? The Freedom Caucus is funded by a lot of dark money that starts in D.C., that goes through Young Americans for Liberty and through the American Action Fund. Young Americans for Liberty,
Conservative Partnership,
the CPI, Conservative Partnership Institute. Young Americans for Liberty used to support our school choice. The free, limited government, all that kind of stuff. Guess what? YAL, Young Americans for Liberty, now supports what I call ESAs, government-run school choice, all that kind of stuff, because that's where the money came from. At the same time, all of YAL's money dried up, and I think CPI probably got involved with them, is when Young Americans for Liberty were going through problems and losing all their donors because there was a whole sex scandal, with the young kids and, whatever they were doing at colleges and all that kind of stuff. And that's why I think their money dried up and they had to find another source. And the other source was Jim DeMint and those guys that said, hey, you can go into states and pretend to be conservative and, con all these people under the Freedom Caucus name. Literally, the State Freedom Caucus Network is run by people from CPI out of D.C., from the Conservative Partnership Institute. Where did the Conservative Partnership Institute get their $40 million last year? And the year before that, and this year and next year? Where did they get it? Anybody here donated to CPI?
They get it from dark money NGOs.
Dark money NGOs and dark money people that guess what they want. They probably want the billions of dollars that will go through government-run school choice and the billions of dollars of the other things. I know people that have run for office who were solicited and given donations by Howard Rich and those guys in the old days to support school choice that have then told me, oh yeah, they donated the $20,000 or $30,000 for my campaign, and then guess what? They started asking me to support
the ESA.
Well, the ESA was, yes, that's been a more recent development, obviously. But back in those days, they were asking them to support the cheap labor coming across the border.
Yep.
Amnesty and all that type of stuff.
Gang of Eight.
Yeah, that's what they were asking these people to do, and these were State House people, right? So this is local South Carolina State House people.
So they came in and tried to organize some people in
North Carolina. Okay.
And fine gentleman by the name of Keith Kidwell, who's from down east. He pays attention and he says, it looks like to me every state legislative freedom caucus I see has become just another pit of the darkness.
Yes.
So he told them to go away.
Yes. And that is the problem, because we talk to all of them. We hold everybody accountable, right? And Olga even used it in my nomination speech for chair, which I did not even have somebody to nominate me, because we didn't think about it. But you did it, I know, and you did a fantastic job. And since you were a delegate, I guess you could get up there and actually do it. But she part of her speech, I didn't see her speech or see what she was going to say. But she was like, I will hold both sides. I will hold everybody accountable. I will hold us accountable. I'll hold ourselves accountable. But
if you do the right thing, being held accountable is not a problem.
Right. And I don't even ask. And I told people the other day, I was like, I don't mind the bazillion questions I'll get, because I volunteer to answer anything about anything. And I get a lot of questions, but you know what? It actually helps me. It can get exhausted, but it helps me formulate and understand where we need to go and make it help. If I pick up in an explanation one little tiny other kernel of information, it's worth it. It's like when I would go to a continuing legal education class, I might know everything about it. It might be a basic, some whatever class, but if I can pick up and learn one thing, it's been worth it. So that's kind of the way I look at it, but I'm like, I look at the Freedom Caucus, and it's like, they're funded by dark money. YAL comes in there and gives them door knockers from out of state. That's worth, because I've been to the meetings with YAL, it's worth $30,000 to $50,000.
Yep.
if they send in a team, a group of kids, and pay for the paraphernalia, pay for their
hotel room,
hotel and food
transportation
for
and food.
2 or 3 months to knock on a couple thousand doors in my house district, that's worth about $30,000 to $50,000.
Same thing that the Koch brothers did with
Yeah.
Americans.
American, same thing they did with AFP, same thing. Which you got both of them out there supporting the same people. It's great.
Freedom Works.
Is anybody on the Freedom Caucus worth?
There's some, yes, I think there's some good. I mean, I'm painting the broad brush, just like you paint the broad brush with rhinos.
You gotta go somewhere with somebody you can count on.
Well, that's what the problem is. That's why a lot of people, and I've talked to some of our other friends, and I've talked to even the establishment on the other side. I said a lot of these people believe them because they're looking for hope. They want hope. They're like, I sit there and preach, 95% of them are bad, and I can't tell you if the 5% are good, right? Where's the hope there? The hope is you get elected, and we get real people elected that are uncompromising, not in uncompromising and coming up with legislation and building coalitions. I'm saying uncompromising because they can't come buy you off. If you believe this today, 6 years from now, after you've been a House rep for 6 years, are you still going to be following what you believe? And or if you've changed, you got a darn good reason, and you can explain it, and you don't feel challenged by explaining it, and you teach people why you've changed that opinion, and it better not be a BS excuse type thing, and it can't be, well, you know what, I got elected with the grassroots, and now guess what, I don't talk to grassroots anymore, which several of them have done, because they're getting all their money from the money special interest, and they can now spend the $30,000, $50,000, $100,000 they need to stay in office, because that's all they care about, and they don't need the grassroots anymore. How many people have we gotten elected from the grassroots, and you watch them flip and switch all the time?
Well, and
Benton Blunt and Rick Bradley come to mind.
We can discuss that, and I know I have not. Yes, they're voting in a different way than what
I think they're taking their lead from Dan Drew.
well,
or Liz Seaman or the
Joey Russo.
well, I don't think they're taking the lead.
Ennis Fan.
Russo's a follower. Ennis Fan is putting out all the strategy and putting videos and doxing all of them. But it's also the county administrator. Why? I mean that is the problem with not having fired the county administrator day one.
First day of that Citizens Academy, Joe Cornell knew who I was already, and he knew I was trouble.
Oh, there's a post yesterday,
it's a good thing to walk.
and they're mentioning me in the post. I'm like, I didn't really remember these people even know who I am. And I'll tell you another story about the No Kings thing we went to last Saturday. That was very interesting. But talking back about this piece of it, it's we have to look a little deeper, and we have to get people elected that aren't going to change. The one thing people can say about me is I have not changed. I say the same stuff today that I said 10 years ago. Now I've seen people that believed us and supported us, and now for some reason don't changed for whatever reason. We have a friend that supported us on the school choice stuff, now thinks all school choice is bad. It's way in the wrong direction. It's way only going to help the UN agenda, but we're fighting the UN agenda. But now they think all school choice is bad. We all just have no school choice and no this. I'm like, well, if we don't have our school choice, you're going to have the government run school choice. And that is the UN agenda. And I can assure you the UN agenda, based on the fights that we have had, that you've seen us have, we're not the ones doing this. But that's a long show. But it's like they change. And it's like, why are you changing? I don't understand.
Me, the big question on education is, will Congress have the stuff to codify legislation the ending of the U.S. Department of Education?
That is going to be a huge test, and they should.
It should be. It should be.
100 years to do that.
But you know what? I mean, I think it's on the list. I don't think it's high enough on the list that they're looking at right now. But I do think it'll work.
Trump keeps putting it on the list.
Yes, he keeps putting on the list, and I think at some point he's going to get tired of it not being done, and he's going to say, "Hey, you were supposed to give me a report by a certain." It's been 150 days.
Yep.
I'll give him 150 days. I'll give him 300 days. But, I'm not giving 4 years. I mean,
No.
it's got to get done.
We've seen more action by this administration in 4 months now than I think I've seen in any administration in my 69 years in this country in 4 years.
It is absolutely
It is
incredible.
mind
4
boggling.
months, and you're right. Today's the 20th, so at noon today. So we're 4 months and 35 minutes into it, and they've been on fire. And part of it, and a lot of people, I talked to somebody the other day that did not know this, but there's the America First Policy Institute, which is down there in Florida. Those guys have been sitting around writing up their plans and executive orders for 4 years, and they've been biting at
That's
the
who
bit.
Linda McMahon was working with.
Yes.
That's who I met her
Yes,
through.
and
came-
she was part of that, and they put her in charge of the Department of Education. And I gotta find the belief that woman wants to get rid of the Department of Ed.
Well, when
She
you
wants to work herself out of a job. She doesn't need the money. She's got plenty of money, right? So she's not sitting there, wanting to keep it. I think she has a burning fire in her gut to get rid of that thing. So I think it's going to
The No
happen.
Kings thing, that was a Trump protest. wasn't it?
Yes, it was a
Yeah.
Trump protest. It
Yes,
was
sir.
funny because even Kerry last week, but they disguised themselves as somewhat of a more patriotic thing. She actually thought it was, somebody like us, a pro-Trump thing. I'm like, no, that's not. I mean, and it's not, but you had to dig through. There were a lot of people that were confused
What was
by
it
it.
like
No,
in
but-
Greenville?
There were more people there than I thought. There was probably anywhere, I would say, closer to 1,000. Just kind of trying to see the blocks and not adding that number up. The Democratic Party made a post about it saying there were 2,000 people there. So that tells me 1,000 is probably the right
And the
number.
media said 5.
Yeah, somebody said 5.
That's right, yeah, I've been saying that.
But we,
I'm like, where? Even the Democrats are only saying
now,
2.
has everybody seen the controversy that happened in North Carolina with the No Kings rally? With my North Carolina State House member showing
yes.
up at their No Kings rally in Raleigh, carrying a poster, had a pole like this, and they're still arguing about whether it's Stephen Miller or Elon Musk on the other side,
Right.
and Trump's head on the other side, and the poster was a picture of a guillotine, and it said, well, sometimes, yes, we need more cuts. Nobody in the North Carolina media covered it until Pete Callender started talking about it on his show Monday afternoon. And amazingly enough, within 10 minutes of him bringing the subject up on WBT, WRAL posted a story, the News and Observer posted a story, because, as much as they hate the alternative media, the particularly conservative talk radio, they also know if they don't come out and at least be on the stuff that there's no question. I mean, there's a picture that circulated on 15,000 websites or something of her standing there with it. And the biggest thing was said anywhere, gosh, she's got some terrible teeth.
That's, people, we got to pursue that stuff, especially when it's threats on the lives.
Where was the rally in Greenville? The Weston?
In Greenville, the rally was at Unity Park. So
Okay.
we drove down. I didn't drive my truck because obviously it's a little obvious. So we took a friend's truck. So we went down there, just walked around. I didn't see anybody I knew, which I found kind of interesting too. They had 3 main speakers. One of the main speakers, or the keynote speaker, it's 2 of them were veterans, because they were trying to make it all patriotic. They're like literally talking about supporting troops, and I'm like, you people have never supported troops. What's going on? They literally said the pledge. They didn't do a prayer, but they said the Pledge of Allegiance, or God bless America. One of the 2.
Word was on the street that they had actively worked to recruit 8,000 to 10,000 veterans, and they did it through the groups like was one of the guys with. He's on TV all the time. That his just. I don't understand how he claims to be a veteran where everything he wants to do is to destroy veterans.
It's
But he's a
everything.
spokesperson.
But again, think about back to Yvonne's presentation, what we've done, Freedom Caucus, that it's all about the mental manipulation. You've got to stop and piece it together and ask the questions, and what, as we say with a shirt, watch what they do, not what they say. That's a simplistic way to looking at it. But you know what? It actually
It's the
fits.
truth.
It's the truth, and I mean, it fits in there. Why? I mean, nobody would have ever thought we would have been supportive of William Timmons in the congressional primary last year, because we've had massive battles with him.
Because he was running against the Freedom Caucus too.
Well, there were two issues.
Freedom Caucus was running against him.
Yeah.
Right. There was the issue number one of
Well said.
the alternative was Adam Morgan. And obviously the thought process was, well, William Timmons is committed to only being there for 10 years. Adam Morgan, so we would have 4 years left of Timmons. Adam Morgan would probably be there for 20, and God only knows where he'd go, and it would be hard to get him out, and blah, blah, blah.
And Timmons actually has done some good stuff.
And that's the other point. When you start looking at his voting record, it's like, okay, he's actually doing good stuff. And he actually supported Trump.
I was just discussing that with someone there, how they just heard William speak about the Doge committee, what they're doing, and the person said they have never seen him so passionate about
I said,
good
gosh, he
things.
sounded like one of us. What's up?
Right.
Yeah.
And
And
I-
he is very interested on the financial side of it and all that. Now, we didn't know how excited he was going to get what Doge is going to do. But I'm like, we ended up getting a bonus because he's super excited about that stuff.
Well,
But
and
for us, the analysis was Timmons for 4 years, and he's committed to that. He's been very vocal about it. I don't know how he's going to walk back that. And then, and he even told us that personally here recently. And somebody told me he was at a speech the other day, and he even talked about it there. Versus Adam Morgan, who
Now, when-
won't
when
talk
does-
to us.
When does Tim Scott run again?
4 years.
Yeah, he's not.
He could take Scott's place.
It could be. That could be. But that's a big race. That's a statewide race. I don't know if he's up for wanting to do
Statewide
that.
races are just fun.
I know. That would be an interesting. That was always the talk. He would take Lindsey Graham's spot. Blah blah blah. I don't know. It'll be interesting
I
to see
think
as
Lindsey's
it
planning
goes.
to outlive Strom Thurmond in the Senate.
I don't know.
That's his-
I mean, who knows?
It's like he's entitled and everything. He went in there behind Strom Thurmond. He figures now he's entitled to take it till he's an octogenarian.
I can say-
Excuse me, centurion.
I was
That's a
a volunteer coordinator for the first Lindsey Graham for Congress campaign.
So it's your fault.
Well, Greenville County was there was no question, and he was running in what was a quote unquote blue seat. And I will say that the time I spent around him during that first campaign was just as fine of a Christian conservative man as I've ever spent time with. But it's just like
He's
what we're
evolved.
going through with my Senate race.
Tom Tillis, they evolve and they change over time, especially up there with those big numbers.
Fortunately, Tom did what he did in our state as speaker that turned the whole economic direction of the state around.
So he did a good job.
Oh yeah, and I will say, even when I'm doing
Yeah.
speaking about the candidates you said, I can talk about in a minute. But anyway,
Yes.
What else happened in Greenville? Did anything else happen at the Greenville?
Oh yeah, we'll figure.
Go ahead.
But the guy that was speaking, he literally he obviously enlisted, was not happy with his time in service, so they found disgruntled enlisted veterans or whatever. He literally, there was a couple things he complained about, but he literally complained about the fact that being in the Army, they made him run too much.
I saw a clip
Now,
of that.
I haven't been in service, but I mean, I went to the Citadel for undergrad. That's what they do. Like, you run and you run and you
Doesn't
run
matter
and
what
you
branch
run
you're
and you run. And I'm like sitting here, is that guy saying what the gentleman I was with was a Navy vet. And it's just like over. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. And he's like, and if you run too much, you can actually hurt your knees and hurt your body. I'm like, what? Am I hearing this? I'm like, you're talking 2,000, 3,000 years of history about how to build an army, and it's running, and he's complaining. But he also complained with two other points that his commander would in Afghanistan, I think it would make them drive on the shoulder of the road
to avoid the IEDs.
To hit IEDs is what he was saying, and that they would, his commander would make them walk across like open fields so they get shot at. And his reasoning for that was so his commander could get some awards because he was glory hunting.
Oh my God.
I'm like, I don't know many people that got awards for getting their people killed. I don't think that's what he was doing. I think it was just one of those kids that was just, we've seen him quit at the Citadel all day long, and we were happy to see him go. And it's like,
I'd like to ask our son about that because he spent 14 months in Afghanistan.
it made no sense.
Is that like the guys that have to swim too much in the Navy?
Probably. I mean, yeah, I didn't.
Like I say, we ran too in the Navy, and even though you can't
And you can't run on water.
Yeah.
What are you running for?
Running training.
Yeah.
Too, you know.
So I mean, it was
Yeah.
other than that, it
But
was
we did get a lot of swimming too.
yeah. There was a girl, a female veteran. She was complaining about PTSD, and you could tell she didn't like working in the system, so she had to become her own realtor. And I don't know if she's got a solo real estate company or she's built some big massive real estate. My bet is it's probably some solo thing, and but she didn't want to have a boss. So I mean, she didn't want to be told what to do. That's what they tell you to do.
That's why
In the Army, they tell you what to do. I actually would love to go back to my college days and 3 squares and a bunk. Tell me what to do. I'll go where I'll be fine. Tell me how much to run. It would help. I need somebody yelling at me to run. But it was. I mean, it told me, and you looked around and you saw the people, and not to disparage the way people look or whatever. But I'm like, yeah, this is not a group that's gonna come take over. This is a bunch of disgruntled people that aren't happy about something. And they like to complain about, Trump, and Trump is bad and he's evil. Literally on the drive over, me and this one individual who's a Navy veteran and does participate in some stuff at the VA for his health stuff. And he was talking about how much better the VA is since Trump's been there.
And now they say it's totally changing under Doug.
Doug Collins out
Collins.
of Georgia.
Georgia.
Yes, and Collins is fantastic.
He
But-
is.
But I mean, he was we were having the drive over. He's telling me about how it's like night and day at the VA. Well, there was a guy as we were walking out that was holding a sign saying how the VA sucks now under Trump and how he's destroying it. So my friend, I don't want to dox him and say his name, maybe probably be fine with it, but sat there and talked to the guy and asked him, what the problem was. Well, my daughters both work for the VA, and they tell me, because obviously he wasn't a veteran and doesn't go to the VA. So his 2 daughters worked for the VA. One, it sounded like, worked for the VA in DC. One worked somewhere in Columbia, Augusta, whatever. And what he was complaining about was, they can't help the people as much because now they're being required to go to the office.
Yep.
I didn't get all the details, but I certainly got the detail that, now my daughter has to drive 30 minutes to go to work. How long did you drive just to get here? 30 minutes? 22 minutes? They're complaining about hour and 14. I mean, that's why people would rather watch it online.
A year ago, it was a big problem at VA
A year
because
ago.
they were treating the illegals.
Yep.
And so the veterans had to wait in line,
And I'm sure Trump has reversed that
Yeah.
and said, yes. It was the same thing, and we talked about it last week, about, the immigration, renew your passport, male, female, other, it's like, X, whatever, all these other things. That was one of Trump's, executive orders. I confirmed that over the week. No, we're not doing any more of that junk. That's what the America First Policy Institute was sitting there doing, is lining all that stuff up. So day one, I feel bad. We've wasted, hate to say we wasted. We've only, got 150 days into this. We only got, think about it, 365 times 4. We have got to keep moving. And I think they'll get to all these things. That's why, back to the Department of Ed. I think there's a list, and I think they're working down the list. They get distractions. I guess you get the distractions of Iran and other little things that pop up.
And the judges.
Good
That's
God.
a message check.
What's the way with these judges?
Fairly determined, naughty or nice. Donald Trump's coming to town.
Oh, everybody. Everybody's getting a Christmas gift
We
today.
have a little inquiry.
Yes.
Tony wanted to talk about the Trump mobile and what people's ideas were about it, or whether we thought people would move to that and
I'm sure
Trump Mobile.
mobile.
Trump Mobile.
Trump Mobile, yeah.
The phone system.
There is going to be a certain number that will move to it just because it has the word Trump on it.
I looked at the website. have a phone.
I prefer silver over gold for the phone.
They have a
Well,
phone, but the
gold
phone's
is
not going to be
the way
ready.
go.
But the phone's not going to be ready till the fall, like September.
Yep.
I
So
think Tony said August.
August.
is it August? Is it coming out a little bit sooner? Okay.
Yeah, that was the Wall Street Journal sure had that. I don't remember what the Epic Times had.
Right.
Or something similar.
I don't know when, or I think it's built on the Android system.
Correct.
You could bring your own phone, so I think you can bring your own like a iPhone or something to the system. I don't know what network they're using. I've been told it's similar to a licensing agreement that they've got.
To bring your
I think
Is it
Tony did some
AT&T?
research.
AT&T and a couple of others.
Which
Okay.
is it
Well,
Verizon?
they're using all. No, they're using
So
all.
they're using
three
all
them.
of them.
They're doing the same thing that
Patriot Mobile
Patriot
does.
Mobile does, that Mint Mobile does. They use T-Mobile, AT&T, and Verizon.
I believe that the hardware is the phone, and that's going to be about close to 500.
It's
Yep.
$4.99, I think. And
Yeah.
it's supposed to be all
And then
made
there's
in
gonna be
America
about
somehow.
47 for the
Yes.
access to the internet.
45,
47.
47, 45. 40,
Yeah.
it's cost $47.45. That was the joke.
The
Should it be 45, 47?
The nice thing about it,
$2 extra bucks.
the nice thing about it is that Apple iPhones, you cannot add, without paying.
Second number?
No.
Well,
Storage.
no, you
Storage.
Storage.
Well, and you also have to have a phone that is unplugged.
Well, Tony
Unlock.
said that
No.
said that apparently for
Unlock.
the new phone,
Unlock.
you're
Yeah.
able to use
A
like
chip.
to.
There's going to be a slot where you could pop a chip
For
in,
extra
and
storage.
it would hold your extra storage.
Yeah.
Whereas they'd stick you, if you want to have Apple to do something similar, but they wouldn't have a chip.
Right.
And I didn't feel like paying extra. As soon as I was ready to buy one of the 16
Yes.
Apple 16s, and I said, this is okay. But as soon as I saw that the chips are going to be going in there, I said, hallelujah, I'm going to save some money, and I will still have the access that we want.
My personal issue is I've gotten used to the Apple phone
Yeah.
in the operating system, and I've been confused in the past because I don't know the Android side of
You
it.
don't want to see how
Android's
many
a whole lot
old
easier.
iPhones I have.
Yeah. But is the phone only Android? That's on the Trump mobile. I think
would
it's
think,
Android. Yeah. So
Yeah,
it can't.
I'm-
Tony is currently on iPhone 8.
Are you on the 8?
that's an oldie.
That is an oldie.
And the only person that benefited from me is my wife, who got one of the special edition iPhones,
Right.
because it was exact same frame as the one that I was using.
Right.
So I would be able to take care of it for her. Being a good husband.
Fully understand.
Yes.
What? I don't know. It's obviously new. I haven't done
Yeah.
that deep of research. It's not at me, but I do know like Patriot Mobile, they can do those different types of things. It is probably a licensing thing like
Yeah,
that. And I
but-
think
yeah,
there will be
but-
people that will move to it just because of that.
I saw Don Jr. talking about the thing with the three major carriers that they were going to be able to piggyback all three.
I think it's a great idea.
That
I
is-
mean,
that's-
yeah,
yeah.
I think it's great. And I
I saw that also.
my comment back to some people when I first saw it that came out was, you know what? Before, because they do it to us, and I have a lot of empathy for his situation because we've gone through most of the same things he's gone through. It doesn't matter what he says; they make up things and mislead and all that kind. Remember in the beginning of 2016, they sat there and said, "Oh, he's doing this all to make money and all this kind of stuff." So he dialed back and he tried to comply with what they were trying to do, and trying to say, "Hey, I'm not here to make money. I'm here to make America better." Now I think he's really said, you know what, screw you people. It doesn't matter what I do. You're going to sit there and say, so if my kids who have actually, the guy lost money, he suffered through this type of stuff. We've suffered through it, right? And I'm kind of like, you think I'm making money off of selling shirts? Really? You really think I could go dig ditches and make more money? But it's about collecting names and spreading the stuff and all that stuff. But I'm like, you don't think I could go do tax returns or legal work or anything and make more money than, oh, we sold 4 shirts this week or 10 shirts this week or 100 or whatever it might be. I'm like, or gave them away as donations and all that kind of stuff. But I'm kind of like, we're not here to make money. And I don't think Trump was. And I do find the fact that, he's kind of told them to go, jump in a lake. Because, I mean, that Olga's, kind of, she's always said, oh, when are they going to start coming to us asking, what are you doing selling the shirts and doing this stuff? And you're making money off of the GOP. And I'm like, really? You really think this is what do we do full time, to make money off? And I don't really care when the splinter person, that the names, come in and say Jeff Davis is making a ton of money off of shirts. I'm like, go jump on the lake. I don't care anymore.
Well, most people know nothing about the operation of the political parties anyway.
Right.
I mean, that's
But look at this building. This building is owned by my stepfather. Now, my mother and he were not married at the time, but they've been together for 20 some odd years. But they did finally tie the knot. So they did what they did. But I don't get into all that. But I mean, he allowed us to use this building because it's been sitting here empty for 5 years, and I think he had an affinity and an affection. And he said, Jeff, y'all can use, because I was giving him grief before you were involved in this. I'm like, you got 35,000 cars driving by every day. Can we stick a sign? Because we would put political signs out there and stuff like that. And he would let us do that. But I'm like, he said, y'all can use it. You have to clean it up, and we put some money in to get our money, like $40,000 to $50,000 of our money to get this place to at least livable, because it's been sitting there empty for all this time period. And then he said, but if you can pay the insurance and the taxes, and that came out to, I think, $800 or $850. I think we moved it to $850 because the taxes went up a month. Now we added for the GCRP, we pay the utilities. We made a flat thing, so we now, it was $1,300 to start, $1,350 now to cover the internet and all that kind of stuff. Literally, those jerks sit there and said we were making money off of it by paying, my father-in-law or stepfather now, and that, the $850 we were paying him for the use of this building, he actually turned around and gave it to me. I'm like, you haven't met the guy. He's super nice, but he's not giving the money back to me, number one. But it wouldn't have mattered. I mean, we had a study done on what it would actually cost to rent this place. It was, it's like $2,500 to $3,000 a month. I mean, plus the utilities and all that stuff on top of it. I'm like,
well, just 2-3 weeks ago, one of people that up to a month ago was almost like a spokesperson for the party, but then she got all upset about something, posted on somewhere on Signal that one of so the rent is due the 1st of every month, right? So Jeff got the check from GOP on the 28th.
28th.
You have to deposit the check, write a new check to deliver to the landlord.
Do more research on the phone and let us know. And if you do
I'm
it,
cutting edge, so
all right, good.
Don't worry about it. I'll share what I find.
Listen, I've been on the bleeding edge for about
Ladies,
everything, so
gentlemen.
I'm glad somebody else to do the cutting edge.
All right. I got blades.
Thank you, sir.
You want to do Sabres or something else?
Anything's fine.
Then I'll open a bottle of champagne that way. Then.
I would love to enjoy that bottle of
I've done it 3
champagne.
times from my deck.
Perfect. Thanks, Tim.
And anyway, she made a comment that why the GOP is writing, what do you call
Or
it?
double paying the
Billing
rent.
checks for Olga and Jeff.
But we literally on our treasurer's report, and it was funny to watch, the Oconee people go through their treasurer's report. We file all of our stuff with the State Ethics Commission, even though Drew legally we're not required, and Drew tells the parties not to because he wants to hide everything everywhere. So and the Oconee people knew because they took over in this reorg. Long story, but they're going through their stuff and how to report. We literally put out our financial statements. We put out a copy of the bank statement, so you can see that I cashed, I don't know, say it was April on like, April 2nd or 3rd. And then, I guess the May rent, it cleared like on the 30th of April. It's like, it cleared. What do you think we were getting double pay? You have the bank statement. You can literally look at it, but it took about 2 seconds for somebody to write a little post on Facebook sitting there saying, oh, they're double paying the rent to Jeff and Olga. And she has nothing to do with any of it. So I'm like, it's crazy. So I want to talk about Don Brown. Don Brown. I know. I said it right the first time, but I said it wrong one time.
It happens. I know. Go ahead, sir.
No, but I want you to tell us. I mean, Don came down to the convention. He was nice enough. I don't know, set up a table and all that kind of stuff. Met a few people, stuff like that. Give us his, and this is in North Carolina. So
Correct.
We've got our battle in South Carolina with Lindsey Graham. We got to figure that out, and it's evolving and it's going where it's going. And I can tell you, I saw the polling numbers that got put out, and it was, it's obviously bad polling numbers for Lindsey Graham. But if push comes to shove, it's like, the polling numbers that came had Lindsey Graham at 48%. And I'm kind of like, the only person out there that has any viable chance, or at least is out there talking more about it, is Mark Lynch. But the numbers was, I think it was 22% were going to vote no matter what against Lindsey Graham. I think there was some 23 or 24% or 29% that would consider it. And then you had the undecided, and then you had the people that were going to vote for Lindsey anyhow. Well, when you did the head to head, we ought to pull up the exact numbers. Lindsey versus Mark Lynch had 23%. I'm like, so you're pulling the 22% that are going to vote for anything, a chair, and he got 1% of the people who may vote against Lindsey and or the undecided. So I'm like, it's not happening. So something needs to be dialed up in his campaign substantially. And he doesn't have, I don't think, the people to run his campaign. Because the things I've seen out of there are not something that anybody's going to win a campaign. So I'm not even sure he's trying to win, quite frankly. And I'm kind of like, and we have had our issues.
It may just be a name ID thing.
It may be, hey, I just want to get the Mark Lynch name and the Jeff Lynch name out there, and I'm going to expand substantially my furniture business. So I don't know.
I heard he brought up $5 million.
He took $5 million out of his 401k account and loaned it to his federal account. Now, a loan can be paid back. Just because you put $5 million in there doesn't mean you
retrieved. I think is the proper term they use now.
Retrieved?
Yeah,
yes. In other words, if you put your money into
and then retrieve
it back from the
it doesn't mean you have to spend it. I mean, I tell people all the time, if you run for a house, Patrick Haddon did it when he first ran for a house. You want to scare people off? Go loan your account $100,000. People see six figures in there, like, oh, I'm not running against that guy. It doesn't mean the guy's going to spend it, and Patrick Haddon didn't spend it, right? So so that's part of that scheme. Number two, who the heck takes $5 million out of a 401k account and pays 30-40% income tax on it? 401k is ordinary income.
Yep.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Who the heck? I mean,
but
I'm a tax attorney, CPA. I ain't advising nobody to take $5 million.
My question is, if it's put back in during the same fiscal year,
no.
Okay.
It's a 60-day thing. You can do a rollover, so you can sit on the money for 60 days. We used to play that game in the old days. I checked it; it's still the same thing. I'm not in the biz, so I don't follow all of the intricacies out there. But I don't see something that you can sit it in there for a year and get it back, and then not pay the income tax. So I think he's going to have to pay the income tax. Now there may be something, and if somebody knows, and I guess I don't have as many old other CPA tax contacts as I used to, but I'm like, I did look it up, and there's a 60-day rollover.
Okay.
But I think it's because I thought there might be something with COVID or some one of those things. They made a whole bunch of things. Maybe there's something else he's pulling, but normally you can't take a loan off of it. And even a loan that they cap out at $50,000. So I think he's paying the tax on it. But we could ask him, why would you do that? I mean, because people beat up on Michael LaPierre for taking money out of his 401k account. It was just a couple $100,000 or $400,000 or $500,000, and saying, that's a dumb thing to do. You shouldn't do that. Mark Lynch goes the other level and takes $5 million. So I mean, it's kind of like, why are you doing that? But the flip side too is, Mark Lynch will not sit down and talk to us. We've had issues with Mark Lynch for 3.5 years. If you were serious about running for U.S. Senate,
You got to have everybody.
you got to have everybody. I'm not running for a political office. I don't care. I'm about the hardcore MAGA America First people. We can get enough people to win, the GOP stuff. That's what we're going to do, and we're going to hammer. That's part of our plan for the whole
Which
bigger.
is why you're a Don Brown supporter.
That's why I'm a Don Brown supporter. Oh, we got to get back to Don Brown. But that's what we're dealing with in South Carolina.
Well,
My hope or my thought process, and the rumor that's out there, is that on the South Carolina side, Andre Bauer may run for U.S. Senate. He was we worked with him or certainly with the Trump team since 2023. He was one of the 3 people on the Trump team, in the state of South Carolina. There are 2 campaign guys, and Andre. He was a former lieutenant governor. He's run a statewide campaign.
Very smart business
and
man.
one smart business guy. And I think he has the presence to go out there and raise the $25 million or so you probably actually need to do it. And I think that guy could pull something off, especially as bad as Lindsey's numbers are. I'm sure he could pull more than just the 22% that are definitely going to vote against Lindsey. And
Well, yeah, because Andre was a very popular individual as lieutenant governor. He actually was a lieutenant governor and did something.
Yeah, I mean, he was before my time of moving back, but I mean, I've read some of his stuff. I mean, he was pushing some sort of license plate that would have, God we trust or something. Back there was some constitutional issue back in those days and had to do with Florida, and so I mean, he pushed the envelope on that stuff.
He was walking all over the state too, wasn't he? I mean, he was just
Oh yeah.
walking all over the state.
Yeah.
Some great ideas about that.
Well, our problem is we've got a little bigger state to cover.
Yeah, you do.
They do, yeah. So
Yes.
let's talk about North Carolina, because North Carolina has their own version of Lindsey Graham, and their version is a gentleman by the name of Tom Tillis. Tom Tillis. Tom.
That-
Thom.
As John Rich so kindly did it. John
Did he
Rich.
do a song?
John Rich did about on a 30-second jingle right after the Ed Martin thing.
Yes.
And it was thom, 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 you've been wrong, wrong, wrong.
Did he really?
Yes.
John
Matter
Rich.
of fact, we are in communication with John Rich because he said he would come do
Concert for you guys.
an event for somebody that runs against him.
And did you know he won Celebrity Apprentice?
Mhm.
I think season 3 or 4. We
But-
saw it. That's the only reason I know who John Rich is.
Well, I'll give you a little quick background.
But he is a
on
big
Don.
conservative, and I've heard he's been a big supporter of Trump. So it's great.
Don is a inactive, because I learned there's no such thing as a retired JAG officer. You're either active or inactive. He's a inactive 16-year Navy JAG officer.
Judge Advocate General, which is the lawyers.
Yep.
So
Constitutional attorney, has been involved in medical freedom. Matter of fact, he was the one who represented these 76 employees at the Savannah River plant and actually got them to drop this, finally got the Biden administration to drop the mandate. He's probably best known for, I don't know how many people are familiar with the story of Clint Lawrence. Clint Lawrence was a Green Beret airborne out of Fort Bragg in Afghanistan. And he and his men were out on patrol, and they see this motorcycle with 3 Afghans on it coming at them. And he got to a certain point, and Clint gave the order to defend yourself. And they did, and they killed 2 of the 3. Come to find out, all 3 of them were documented Taliban bomb makers. But because it violated the Obama rules of engagement, they brought him back, did what would be basically a show trial, and sentenced him to 19 years in Leavenworth. In 2019, Don worked with, well, it started in 2017 because he said he would handle Clint for pro bono, and had gotten to know Pete Hegseth through Concerned Veterans for America. And at this time, Pete was at Fox. So Pete Hegseth and Don Brown put together the situation that got Donald Trump to provide a pardon for Clint Lawrence. That's probably the thing he's known publicly most for. He's an author. He's written 16 books, 4 of which have been national bestsellers. He was part of the Trump post-2020 legal team. In fact, the first public endorsement we got after he announced he was running was from Sidney Powell. He has also been endorsed by Lieutenant General Jerry Boykin, former head of Special Forces, and we were just endorsed last Sunday by General Michael Flynn. So, and we've got a couple other endorsements that are coming, but we're doing we are doing a 100% grassroots campaign. Don's point is, I would rather have $5 from 1 million people than $1 million from 5 people.
Right.
He has already been, now there are 100 counties in the state of North Carolina. He started, well, he filed his paperwork in February. He has already been to over 33 counties in the state. And right now, my position in the campaign is operations director, because I don't believe there's such thing as a campaign manager. If a candidate can't manage his campaign, he shouldn't be running.
Sure.
So what I'm doing is I'm trying to build the machine. Anybody in the state of North Carolina, if you've got an event where you're going to have 20 or more people between now and September, call us. I mean, we've got, I think, another 26 or 28 events already on the calendar.
And the website is?
The website is brown4fornc.com. And yes, there is a donate button there in case anybody would like to help remove Thom Tillis, I'm sorry. But Don is just, he is the exact thing that you will meet if you go to an event where he is. And the most amazing thing is most political people, candidates that I have worked with, and this is the 8th straight election cycle where I've been involved in some kind of statewide race in North Carolina. And it's amazing. You get to go into places and you know, you go and you see somebody the second or third time and, well, that's the exact same thing they said the first 2 times. I have never seen Don take a note out of his pocket when he speaks. He will do 10 or 15 minutes about his history and his background. He and I actually met through an organization called Operation 300, which was founded by Karen and Billy Vaughn. Their son was one of the SEAL Team 6 members that died on Extortion 17. Matter of fact, one of the books Don has written is The Shoot Down of Extortion 17. There's now been a movie made of it. But he and I met through there. It's funny, we met at an event down in Orlando and got to talking, or in Jupiter. And I said, so where are you? He said, well, I live in this little town you probably never heard of it, Waxhaw. And I says, yeah, that's how it works in life. He showed us came 400 miles to meet somebody that lives 35 miles away. He ran in the 8th Congressional District, got in the race way too late, still finished 3rd in a 7-person primary. And he says, I'm not upset I lost because Mark Harris is doing an incredible job for the state in the U.S. House. And he's just the right man for this job at this time. And he'll point blank tell you, I don't care if I ever get reelected. I have a constitutional requirement to go and operate within the Constitution. One of his major things is, he says, I will start from day one the campaign to eliminate the IRS, to put an end to. And a lot of people don't understand this.
As a tax attorney, I would support that.
A lot of people don't understand that the design of our Constitution by our founders was there should never be a reason for an individual citizen to ever have involuntary contact with the national government. Never.
Yeah, they went in for terrorists.
They did.
Well, the thing I see about the income tax, because it sure hasn't done the job paying the bills, the whole purpose of the income tax was, and I think it was FDR's, or Woodrow Wilson first, and then FDR doubled down on it. Their whole purpose was to build the database of we the people. I mean, people, and I've had people tell me, well, you've just got these terrible conspiracy theories. And I go back to the 6-month thing.
6 months, yes.
Another thing is he's solely behind getting rid of the National Department of Education. We have seen in 50 years since the Department of Education was founded or was instituted, almost 50, the United States in public education has gone from either number 1 or number 2 in the world to number 27 and number 35, depending on which survey you look at. And
While we've had the Department of Education.
and we spend more dollars per pupil time, or 3 times more dollars per pupil than the next highest spending country in the world. But that was another thing. I'm not speaking for Don here, even though he and I've tied this. The whole purpose of the Department of Education was to dumb down the next subsequent generation. You talk to young people now. I spend a lot of time at our state capitol working with our state legislature. You talk to under 25s, you'd be amazed the number of them that don't even know there is such a thing as a state legislature.
Except for the homeschool kids.
Yeah.
Homeschooler kids?
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
Holy cow.
But
I'm impressed.
I was at an event the other day, and I was actually on my way back from going to Raleigh and spending a day at the legislature, and this nice young man, he said, "So what do you do in Raleigh?" I says, "Well, I go work with the legislature to, and I said, I go on my time and my dime to work on issues that I think are important." And he said, "How do you do anything on legislation without going to DC?"
Oh, my God.
I'm finding more every day. That's more typical. But anyway, Don is the real deal. If you get a chance, I hope if he's somewhere on this end, I'll make sure I keep Jeff informed when he's, because there will be times maybe he's in Transylvania Saturday, tomorrow. It all runs together.
Anything we can do, we'd be more than happy to.
Well, one of the biggest things that anybody that's seeing this can do is, if you know Republicans, because yes, in North Carolina, we actually register by party. So at least, we don't have, the beauty of it, we at least don't have to worry about what the Democrats are going to do in our Republican Party. We've still got unaffiliates involved, and there are several of us on the state executive committee that are looking to close that. But if you know people in the state of North Carolina that are Republican, that would like to actually have a conservative senator, it's an amazing thing. I sent one of the most conservative state legislators I ever worked with to the U.S. Senate 12 years ago. Well, 11 years ago. And anybody that's seen me speak anywhere, I will give Thom credit, because the state of North Carolina was the economic hole of the Southeast up until 2010 when we took control of the legislature. Thom Tillis was one of the major proponents and operators as our state, as the Speaker of the House, that turned the whole economic foundation of the state of North Carolina around. So, I greatly appreciate that. In full disclosure, Thom and Susan Tillis have been personal friends of mine for about 20 years. And I hope that we will be personal friends again. But as I told a pastor friend of mine last night before last, he said, "But you've always been one of Thom's people." And I says, I hope we can be friends again. If we aren't, it will be because of him, not because of me. But I'm at a point in life where I look at I'm going to speak for myself. I look at what my generation has done to this country for the next generation to follow, and doing something for the good of the country is more important than me maintaining a friendship. So we've got a battle. I don't think it's going to take near the amount of money that a lot of people are going to have Don saying, "Well, have you got $5 million in the bank? Have you got to?" I think this primary can be won with a whole lot less money than that.
I think honest people can win primaries with a whole lot less money.
And it's also got to do with a little ground game.
Ground games,
Where
operations.
Over the last 8 elections, like the last 7 election cycles, I have watched some very good candidates do pretty much everything wrong you could do to run, particularly in a primary against an incumbent. And it's just, I will be rolling out more about the plan as we move forward, but we're building a machine. But any of you that know anybody in North Carolina, any of you on the camera that know anybody in North Carolina, please ask them to go to Brown4, FORNC, mySCGOP.com. There's a lot of information about Don there. He's got a full policy page. And yes, he has a donate button. Because
It does take
How old
money.
is he? How old is he?
just turned 65. That's why he said that. Now Don made his play. I mean, like I said, he is some of the legal stuff in his book, his writing. But he and I had a long talk about this before, because I've been urging him to get in the camp, get in the primary since 6 weeks after the last primary when he lost in the 8th district. And he says, and he called me up in February and he says, I just thought I would let you know that I filed my paperwork Thursday. He's done incredible things. He's helped a lot of people, and he feels like that he is the citizen statesman.
And you heard me say in the very beginning when we talked about it, and this wasn't a setup by any means, because I say it all the time, we need to get regular people into office, people that don't care about being reelected.
The problem
Yeah.
we have now is it's and to talk a little bit about Thom, which I don't like to go into a lot, but it's just like what he's done over the last 6 weeks. Blocked Ed Martin.
Yes. Ed Martin was the
Who was, and what was so amazing about that was he did a in the hall interview on, I guess it was CNN, the day after he made the day he made the statement. And he said something that just baffled me. He said to the reporter, asked him, well, what do you think about him? Oh, we've had some great conversations, and I really think he's a good guy. And if he was running, if he had been nominated in any other district in the country, I would probably be supporting him. But it's the J6 thing. Ed Martin actually provided some legal assistance to some of the J6 patriots or political prisoners, whichever name you prefer to use.
Yeah.
And so we got that.
But to me, he's the perfect person to put in there. And why is one U.S. senator throwing up his little weight, and he thinks he knows better than Donald Trump and better than the people?
There's a serious question whether your senator might not have been the one,
Well,
because it's 12-10 on the.
Yes. There's 12 on the Judiciary Committee. There's 12 Republicans, 10 Democrats.
And if it had gone 11-11, then it gets referred to the floor.
And is that a positive referral or whatever? Because they said that
it's just in other words, it's allowed to move to the floor.
Right. So there's the discussion, and I've been trying to figure out too, whether it was Tom Tillis and Lindsey Graham. So it would have been 10-12 against, and he would not have made it.
Would have not
So
been-
my guess is Lindsey Graham was also the other no.
But
To make, as opposed to a tie 11-11, it would have made it
and
10
then
to
the
12.
next week, Mr. Trump does his executive order on a plan to equalize the cost of prescription drugs. A lot of people don't understand. On the world stage, we pay between 10 and 12 times the amount for a drug as you can go.
Right.
And that's one thing people start, oh, I'm going to Canada and I'm paying,
We get stuff out of Poland,
And,
in the old days. It doesn't get done in a while, but
Tom comes out next day and says, well, we can't even think about that. That's in direct violation of the free market. I'm trying to find how is 10 to 12 times as much as everybody else in the free market. And
you start seeing people make decisions that are obviously being controlled by somebody else and big money, special interest, and donors.
well, then
You can't tell me that the Tom Tillis from 15 or 20 years ago would have said there's a problem with making price of prescriptions the same price everywhere.
And being the business person he was, again, his background is he was a systems IT specialist and did very well. And then the last thing that just finally, like I said, I've been marching on this for. They're looking at the big beautiful bill. And one of the great things about the big beautiful bill is it basically yanks the plug on the green new scam.
Oh, this one.
And Thumb comes out and he makes a public statement that, we're going to have to fix that because we're going to have to give these green energy companies an off-ramp rather than just cutting off the money. And that tells me two things. The first thing it tells me is if it hadn't been for the big heavy thumb of the national government being on the green new scam, none of this stuff would have happened. But what makes me worse, even with it being my senator saying that, is I have a senator that says he has no problem throwing good money after bad, even though we know it's a loss. That to me is more, that's more important in the big picture. You know, if it's not working, you pull the plug on it. The Green New Scam people, their job or what they were wanting to do was to show that the military industrial complex were truly amateur grifters.
Yes, exactly. So think about that. Compare it in South Carolina. Oh, their Scout Motors is not going to want to sell their stuff, so we got to bail Scout Motors out. I'm like, what? I mean,
are they still
give them an
coming?
off ramp. I don't even know if they're coming. I think I saw somewhere the other day somebody
Where
was
were they going to come?
Edgefield.
Blythewood or something. I think it was up in Blythewood,
It's
just north of
right
Columbia.
near where matter of fact, my understanding was they were offered a great deal on what was the Mack truck plant. A lot of people don't remember. You know, Mack truck built trucks in South Carolina for 10 years, 12 years, and found out that, you know, the diesel engine, they just, I think the local tax incentives went away, and they says, oh, we'll move somewhere else.
Yeah.
But I know that Scout was offered that facility at a great price. No, that's not exactly what we need.
Yeah. No, because not exactly what we
Because
need
the state's
means
gonna
I
spend
can't
$1 billion
pay
to
off
buy
all
it.
the people that are donating to me that want to come clear the property and sell the property and lay the concrete and do all that kind of stuff. So it's the same thing we had. I used to tell people, you know, during the financial crisis in 2008, I'm like, take some of this commercial property and turn them into a school. Everybody's, oh, you can't put kids in a commercial office building in a school. You know, they need a play yard. You know, like, no, yes, you can. It was somebody wasn't going to make money building the damn school.
I have done, this is one of my areas where on my personal side, I have done a lot of research. I am convinced the single most corrupt industry in the United States today is the school construction industry.
Oh my God.
The average cost of a school building is 3 to 4 times the price per square foot of commercial property. And there's nothing special in the construction.
Nothing you need for a
Right
schoolhouse.
here in Greenville, here maybe 20 years ago, they got $2 billion for rebuild.
Yes.
All these new schools.
Yes.
Well, my dad, who was a professor,
He ran
said-
for attorney general. Who's the lawyer? Olga. Do you remember the lawyer that ran for AG a couple 4 years ago?
His dad was a big wheel too.
He was here in Greenville. His wife was trying to sell that house over in Bonnie Woods. We liked him because he was anybody better than Alan Wilson at the time. But that's what his reputation was back from the old days with the schools. And I don't know if it was $2 billion or I've heard $1 billion, but all of these schools, and if you go look at them, they look like prisons.
Well,
Wade Hampton High School, right down the street, looks like a prison.
You got St. Joseph High School.
Yeah.
Up there off 85. What did they do? They bought an industrial facility.
Yep.
Because it
Did
already had the chemical labs. It already had everything in
Why?
place.
Yes. I mean, I think the city of Greenville is trying to sell that TD Convention Center. You go buy that stupid thing. We were on Augusta Road yesterday, and apparently that big church is now sold or is under contract, and apparently it's going to be a school.
Which one, Augusta Heights?
I don't know who's buying it, but I'm not sure what church. It's closer to the I-85.
Well,
That's Augusta Heights.
Yeah, and I'm curious to see how much they bought it and but I've been told they're going to put a school in there. Think about it. Church buildings are perfect for all that kind of stuff.
one of my
I'll
dads,
tell you why they're 3-4 times more expensive to build to do what Knoxville, Tennessee does. They build them with sinkholes. They keep filling them in.
the key to it is this, and like I said, I've done a lot of, and this is pretty much nationwide. They put the project out for bid. They do not have to accept the best bid. They can say they're giving the bid to the contractor who has the best portfolio of competencies.
That's what,
Yes.
And I can tell you, in my little county, Cleveland County, North Carolina, the last 9 projects between Cleveland Community College and Cleveland County Schools have all been done by the same design, architecture, engineering group.
So they can do that with the bidding, or they can do it with what they did with the ESA here in South Carolina. They wrote the law that the vendor had to have certain things, and there's literally one vendor on the planet that can do what these people do, and it's called Class Wallet. And they're the ones lobbying and paying the lobbyist who's allegedly, has been told by me, sleeping with one of the senators that is pushing it. And I'm kind of like, are we not connecting the dots here? It's about taking a check and giving it to a kid to go to a school. It's not complicated, but they wrote, oh, you have to have a certain online platform. You got to go in and do this. It has to be this color. It's probably the color of the so I'm like, it was the most ridiculous stuff. And I'm sure there's so much money in education. And that's what I've told you guys before. People have told me, elected officials, big people said, Jeff, your problem is you actually care about the kids, number one. And number two, you're going against a machine that is so much money that they're paying everybody off and every social media person to lie about me. And I mean, that costs nothing.
But they're also the ones that are fighting the shutdown of the Department of Education.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
So there's your test, whether it's actually, we're going to fix this. And we got to shut down the Department of Ed.
So
Period.
one more time, brownfornc.com.
Brown, Don Brown, fantastic.
What
I've
they're
done it.
pushing is the Cowboy Logic on
Oh, yeah.
Oh, are they?
He's been on
Donna's, yeah, they're fantastic. Yeah, we know them very well.
Well,
And they push it.
and he fortunately had
Until
lunch
it's
with
out.
Steve Bannon's sister last week. So
Good.
we're making some inroads. And it's
And Steve Bannon is talking about wanting somebody to run against Lindsey Graham and wanting somebody to run against Tom Tillis. So I think there's, get to him.
I'm getting information on my internet from Brown.
Good.
Maybe the last 4 days.
Okay. Yeah, we've
Donate button is, I think, what he wants to say.
Yeah.
He said it 3 or 4 times.
What
I'll say
I
it.
would rather you do though is rather than on those emails, so the total of the money goes to the campaign rather than to the fundraiser.
Send a check.
Or just go to Brown for NC because that all goes directly through our anodot.
Go to Brown for instance.
So hit the button and send money. Okay.
We would
Go to Brown for in
Yeah, go to
FOR.
Brown for FORNC. Well, actually, right now, if you go to Brown FOR or the Brown the numeral 4 or Brown FOURNC, when we got started putting it together, I had something happen with a campaign I worked on 10 years ago, and somebody went out and set up a nefarious website, and so I saw something came up on TV, and I was on the phone with Ken, my data guy, and I said, call Alan right now and tell him we need to get control of the number 4, both written and the numeral.
Yes.
So we got those in there. They direct to it. That may change a little bit, but right now, if you go to Brown 4NC and hit the button, there's a little $sign right up at the corner. It would be greatly appreciated.
Our side needs money. My theory has been we need 10% of what the other side. So, it's a bigger thing on a Senate race or whatever. Maybe 20%. But I do think, if Lindsey Graham's going to spend $100 million, we can do it for 10 or 20. Almost giving me the cut because we are at 2 hours and 11 minutes, but we did start late. It's 1:30 and everybody wants to go home. And I probably heard the most.
Appreciate the time.
No, but let us know what we can do. If he would like, we would love to have him zoom in one time.
We will make that happen.
Yeah, we'd love to do that. Get to know him a little bit better. Get him, informed. We know, and reach out to people in North Carolina. So that's
Change the subject. We came back from Charleston this weekend.
real quick. When is y'all's primary? Ours June 9th.
Ours is March the 3rd, 2020.
So they're coming up quicker. So they'll be March 20 or March 23rd. We're June 9th. But go ahead.
Coming back from Charleston.
Yes.
Where Volvo is got their new manufacturing plant.
Oh yes. Oh yes.
DOT is spending a fortune
Oh,
on
yes.
bridges and roads.
Oh yes.
Going into that facility.
There was $40 million spent to get them in there in the beginning, I think, because I remember watching that because they were like, "Oh, they got to have a special on ramp, off ramp. It's going to cost $40 million." They're probably, I don't know if it's still part of that $40 million from X number of years ago, but I will tell you, it was between us. This is the Volvo plant down in right outside of Charleston. It was between South Carolina and Alabama, and Alabama just said, "We're out. If you're going to pay that much, knock yourself out."
Actually, we were involved at the start of it too. In the
Really?
conversation.
Okay, we can continue.
Okay. All right. We want to go, but thank you for everything. Don or Brown for FOR NC.com.
Thank you.
Don Brown for NC.com. I still got COVID brain. So I got an excuse for chemo brain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We need
Whatever.
to get off.
It's been a long day. It's time for me to go take a nap. She's telling me so. All right. Thank y'all for everything. We'll see you next Friday, if not sooner. Take care. Bye.